It is election night. How do you all feel tonight? Woo!
Good,
Excited.
man. Feel good.
Yes, indeed.
Man.
Yes, indeed. The anticipation, right? All year long, we've been waiting on this night. Here it is. The numbers are
Man.
rolling in, and we're going to talk about it tonight. Let's get started with a word of prayer, and then we can get into the conversation. Father in heaven, thanks for allowing us to gather here this evening for conversation regarding the election. And Lord, we know that you are watching and that you are involved and that you care about the things of mankind. And we just pray, Lord, that you would be throughout this entire election, and that you would be with us in the conversation on this evening, that we would understand what is going on, be able to uplift and enlighten each other, and that we would be lifted up closer to you as we even contemplate the spiritual aspects of what is going on in our country this evening. We thank you now in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 So let me throw this out just to get started. Is anybody nervous? Anybody feeling nervous or anxious about the results that
I
you're afraid of what you see? That's just about all of us, right? That you just don't
Yeah,
know what's
man.
going to happen. And but tell me, what is the worst thing that could happen if Trump wins? Because I know most of us here we're all on Biden's side. But what is the worst thing that could happen if Trump wins on this
Ooh.
evening? People talking about civil war. They're talking about violence. Um,
Nah, that's not what's gonna
Democracy's
happen,
over.
man. Listen, if Trump wins, everybody will go to sleep like it was November 1st and wake up like it's November 2nd and keep pushing. There'll be no disorder in the city. You would have to have some major big thing going on for people to all of a sudden be disruptive. It's what will happen when Biden wins that will be the big disruptor.
But you hear people saying that they are anticipating violence from either side, no matter who wins on tonight. But you're saying you disagree with that. If Trump wins, then all his people are really the agitators, is what you're saying, and that they'll have nothing to complain about. But if Biden wins, his people pretty much aren't the agitators. That's what I hear
Listen,
you
man,
saying.
I think it's voter suppression with the whole there's going to be violence. Just stay in your house.
Yeah.
Man, there's not going to be no violence. If he wins, people are going to sit in their house and be somber and commiserate.
Being here like
Well,
this, right?
No,
I didn't see. I
gotta,
didn't. Go ahead.
I agree with you. I just want to say it's to me it seems like misdirection because to your point, if you're talking about communities of color and black folks, and talking about urban unrest occasions the killing of black people, not elections. So the bottom line is if you're going to talk about urban unrest following an election, you're looking at the wrong community. I know they were boarding up Los Angeles last night and Washington, D.C., and other major metropolitan areas. I could have saved you some money. Um, you keep killing black folks and brown folks in the street, then
Oh,
you'll
we're
have
losing you.
people
We're losing you.
reacting that way. But to your point, I think you're right. It's the other side we need to worry about because if they don't get what they want, they've already signaled that with the president, dog whistling the Proud Boys, that it's going to be violence in the streets, in civil war, and that's on them, not really on communities of color.
Yeah, they're standing by at the ready. Now, one more thing, we've seen throughout some of the protests throughout the summer that there were other agitators that came from other places to some of these states and cities causing trouble. Do you think that might happen if Biden wins? That some other folk will come, these anarchists, and cause trouble in the streets just for the sake of causing trouble?
Man,
I
I'm a
I,
little surprised. I'm just surprised that today was and maybe you guys have heard something that I haven't heard. Today seemed to be as more peaceful than I thought. I actually thought that there would be a lot of unrest today, and I was wondering, would there be intimidation? And so, coming back to that question, your first question, you know, and I don't mean to mess around with this, but I've heard hints that this guy wants to be president forever, and I've thought, man, if he gets 8, you got to get 8 to get to 12, and so and it's not like it hasn't been done before. In our history, we've had the 3-term, and so that was in my mind that could be the worst thing. But you know what? I don't know what could happen tomorrow. I do think there will be maybe a day of chill, but I think what's been happening over the last months very well could continue if Trump is reelected.
And I think to a large extent it's going to be dependent on how close the election is in the different battleground states. If it's very, very close and it seems like it's going over to the Supreme Court with judges that were just put on the bench, it's gonna leave a kind of bad taste in the mouths of Democrats. And I do believe that people are going to have some reactions to it. I really don't know that I really don't know that we can say right now what's going to happen. For me personally, I just hope that whatever happens, that we're able to have some uniting of the country. We've really not seen that in the past 4 years, and that could be because of a president that was looking at another 4 years. So he had to appeal to his base. Given that he won't have another 4 years, we don't know what his attitude will be. And he has not shown the propensity to be loyal to anybody, not even the Republicans. So we're really not sure what's going to take place, but we can just hope.
Trump did say today that he was not going to prematurely declare victory. Now, that statement, you can parse it many ways. He's expecting victory. I guess if you're in any race or any contest of any kind, you should expect victory. But to say I'm not going to prematurely declare victory, I guess you're saying you're going to wait on the results. But it could mean as well that, if I don't win, I'm not going to be out here saying that I'm going to win. Like I said, you can parse it many ways. But, like we said, we don't know how he's going to act because he hasn't shown to be loyal to anything. And what he has shown is that he will do whatever to get his point across, his way across, and to stay in office, and that's what we're all expecting. So, it still remains to be seen. Shinda, we're talking about what is the worst thing that could happen if Trump wins. We've basically been talking about what is the worst thing that could happen today or tonight or in the following couple of days. But to your point, Carl, like you said, today has been a very docile day. I expected more. I expected to hear reports of intimidation at the polls. I expected, because the president was telling people to go out and to be poll watchers and things like this, and I expected people to do that. But I was glad to hear that in many places they had police or National Guard out to ensure that these things didn't happen. And there were also people, putting telephone numbers on there saying if you are experiencing voter intimidation, then call these numbers in your particular state. Because everybody has the right to vote, and nobody should be standing in your way. But I'm thinking that the worst that could happen if Trump wins is that we'll see more of this foolishness that we have been seeing. If you drive through the streets, you've been seeing these Trump parades, even here in California, where people are driving through the freeway and they got these big flags waving on these big trucks and honking horns. And I just think that people will be even more emboldened because of this next 4 years than they even were in these previous 4 years. And that's my greatest fear. That's definitely my greatest fear. Shindell, what do you think is the worst thing that could happen?
Well, I think we've gotten, as Black people, when I say we, that's the collective we. I think we've gotten honestly very complacent with our Democratic Party. And I think that this is a way for us. I think the worst thing that could happen is that we actually stay complacent. I think what should happen is that Black people collectively should look at what benefits us as a community, as a society, as a group of people who have $1.6 billion in spending, bandwidth. And we need to say, how do we leverage what we have, what we own, what we are to our benefit? How do we do that? Because, and everybody's like clowning Ice Cube or whatnot, but, I'm looking at what it is that we collectively are trying to do. Are we trying to have another 50 years truly of freedom, really, since civil rights? We're having another 50 years where we are beholden to any party that doesn't serve us by giving them free votes? Or are we going to say, all right, you know what, we see you and we raise you. Okay, Donald Trump wins. And, you know, we have a whole bunch of hicks that are running around saying all kinds of stuff. Or we have people who are, you know, their traditional Republican selves. What changes for Black people? The Democrats win. We have, oh, yay, you know, now we have a Democrat in office. What changes for Black people? That's always my question. What changes for us? And how do we ensure that we are going to hold these people who we've put in office accountable? So that's the worst, in my opinion, that could happen. I mean, I'm looking at the scorecard right now. Biden 85, Donald Trump 55. I'm just, you know, I'm kind of, I know people are going to be really excited right now. Illinois is blue. Illinois, he's won Illinois. Ohio, he needs to win Ohio.
Is there anything surprising to you?
Yeah, it is surprising to me because I think that I think we have this collective consciousness that he's been able to create within and really like mobilize a certain psyche within people who have never or who haven't been able to really be as emboldened as they normally are, right? And now they're like, yeah, the floodgates are open, and now we can do and say and be and really ourselves, all this politically correct stuff, you know, whatever. And that ignites people. That ignited them. And now they're driving down the street with Trump flags, and they're saying all kinds of stuff and doing all kinds of stuff and harassing people. But what is the Democratic Party doing? You know, and I'm not saying we should be doing those things. I'm just saying it's really, really important that we are not, we can't be surprised by people who have historically shown us themselves. You know, so I can't be surprised at that. All I can say is, what are we as a group of Black people going to do, regardless? Because if we stay complacent, it's horrible. But if the Democrats, when we're really, really going to be complacent, because now we're going to be in a way beholden and waiting. Hey, Kamala, you're Black too. Can you, you know? And that's not a good thing.
Well, you're describing a really important historical phenomenon with our people, because if we think about this long term, the aftermath of the Civil War, you can win the war and lose the peace. And historically, that's what's happened to African Americans. So you win the Civil War, you get a bunch of legislation, the expectation that freedom is coming, and then you see it all squandered in a political bargain in the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, which is the story of Black folks. We could see that with John F. Kennedy, who on the campaign trail talked real big and beautiful to the Black community, in housing, segregation with the stroke of a pen, then gets in and spends 3 years. And unfortunately, he's assassinated. So I'm not, you know, not pulling a Malcolm X here and saying anything negative about him, but he didn't capitalize.
You can pull a Malcolm, honey. I'm Mrs. Malcolm X, honey. So go ahead.
Malcolm said, you know, it was a case of crickets come home to roost, but he was also critical of Kennedy, who made big promises on the campaign trail for Black votes, but didn't follow through. But then, you know, the danger is, and I think you articulated this very well by talking about Kamala. In 2008, we got Barack, and we were all excited about that. And Barack decided he wanted to be the president of the American people. Now, I applaud that from the standpoint of somebody as an American citizen who wants civil discourse and peace. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I'd love for somebody to be coming in now and says, you know what? The same way y'all felt like y'all had your 8 years with Obama and we were going to pay you back with Trump. I'd love for Biden and Harris to come in and go, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Mm-hmm. Democrats don't do that. Our narrative is always, you know, kumbaya, let's build let's tear down walls. Yeah. I'd like to see them come in, because to stop what you're describing, which is serious, because the other part of this is once you lose the peace is the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. To lose the peace is double-digit lynchings. To lose the peace is race riots. To lose the peace is Jim Crow segregation. And this our current president has already put into place certain things that are leading us in the direction, including this whole thing about getting rid of diversity training, that have really, as you said, opened the bottle, and you're not going to put them bees back in that bottle without getting stung.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting when you look back to when Trump won in 2016, on that inauguration. I think they had the celebration. I believe it was. I'm not trying to call him out, but we had a gospel artist. I love his music, man. Travis Green, and I believe he went and played and sang, and he caught a lot of flack. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, man, how could you do this?" With the rhetoric that was coming out, just being there. And I think the Christian community and even some in the Black community, it was kind of like, well, let's go the God route, and God's in control, and we're gonna pray for our leader, and I agree with that. But there's also a part of where you can respectfully disagree with someone who's in power. And I think as a Black community, you could sense that we were saying, hey, man, we got to be united. We can't be doing things like that, and showing that we will not stand up against, racial rhetoric, anything that comes against even brown skinned people, Blacks. I mean, we just can't be just going in the room and saying, hey, we okay with that. And I think
but for so long we've done it. But for so
exactly.
long we've done it, and that has been, I mean, that's the Sambo route, right? I mean, it really is where we go, and we're so concerned about antagonizing white skin that we will forgive, we will allow, we will persevere, we will pursue, we'll pray for our enemies, all this kind of stuff. I mean, great, you can pray for them. But I remember clearly in the Bible where God said, or whoever interpreted God's word said, annihilate everything, annihilate everyone, right? Now, I'm not condoning violence.
we know.
We need to condone violence.
The violence we're talking about, see it in the streets tonight.
All I'm saying is that we tend to lean on that part of the Bible, where our oppressors lean on the other part of the Bible. And I think that there's a lot of Old Testament behavior in our oppressors, and there's a lot of New Testament behavior in us. And it is not serving us well. And by no means am I trying to, to envy or mimic what they're doing. But I think that there needs to be some balance of the way we reconcile our relationship with these people. And I don't think that we're in a position as black people to really be having alliances with people who don't benefit from our empowerment. For instance, like white Republicans or white conservatives or white liberals, because neither of them benefit from our empowerment. They need us to be reliant. And this is where that's where this codependence type thing, this just kind of being lackadaisical about moving us forward and progressing us has come. And it's led us to where we are today.
Tranquilizing drugs.
So let me ask this question then, based on those things, which I agree with what you're saying, Shindell. And we always say get out and vote, that we should vote. So what does our vote do today to change those things? When we look at the ballot, there's no vote for white supremacy or no white supremacy. There's no vote for Black empowerment or let's keep, Black people down. In a sense, there's other things that we can vote for. So most of us have already cast our ballots. But when we looked at the vote today, what were the things on the ballots that would have made a difference for us to bring more empowerment to our community? What are the things that we should have looked at? What are the things that we should have known more about? What are the things that we should have moved on? And in future elections, midterm elections and other elections that come up, what are some of those things that will benefit us? In particular, Black people, people of color.
Well, and that's a question for everybody. California? Are we all in California? Or are we?
Well, we're all over most of us in California, but we have others that will be joining us at different times, but we're all over the country. So we can just.
Well, if we go down ballot, there's several things that I think that we in California in particular that are very, very, that could be very helpful or that can be very disadvantageous to Blacks. So for instance, there is Prop 16, I think it is, where they're using diversity metrics to determine if you can get into college and things of that nature. They're considering them, And I think that that's something that's a kind of a rebuff to Prop 209, which is vital, which was, you know, it kind of took all that away. And then, of course, we saw a reduction in Black and brown students getting into college. So that's vital, right? So I'm looking like, okay, Prop 16, yeah. Well, then there are other props that mask themselves as, you know, we're really trying to help the schools. So we're going to tax your property and we're going to help the schools. But in reality, if we research this stuff, we see that nationwide, schools in Black and brown communities receive $23 billion less than white schools, than affluent schools. So when you tax my property, and I know that this is how those funds are allocated, I am not going to approve you taxing my property to put money into schools that I don't believe are doing a good job anyway, teaching my kid to hate themselves. So that's a no. So anything that was taxing my property and then one of the things I do want to say for whoever is here that is not in California, California is actually one of the only states, the only one that I can think of at this point, that that has a flat system for property taxes. So in other states, what they do is if you are a Black person, like if you identify as Black and you live in a Black neighborhood, you get your property taxes are 13% more than a white person whose home price is the same in their white area. So these are the types of things that like we need to be really, really educated about when we're voting and when we're looking at propositions that impact us as Black people, because they specifically speak to your color, specifically. So I think that it's really important that, you know, when we're looking at, and down ballot is always important. You know, I mean, the president is what the president is. But really what impacts us are our local politics.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we had a program about that just a week or so ago. We talked about a lot of things particular to California, but you know, pointed out some very specific things for us as well. And that is where we have to be educated as voters. You know, I think a lot of people, they're busy in everyday life and it takes a lot to research these things. And so they look at commercials and they make up their mind, or they just go to the ballot. And while they're there, they're reading just little taglines that are there before, you know, they fill in the circle or however it is that the voting machine works. And that's how they're voting. And then at the end of the day, they're being affected by these things. But you just pointed out the importance of being educated and really knowing what's going on. And we can't vote like fourth graders anymore. You know, oh, that just sounds good. Yeah, that's, you know, no, we have to know what is going on in our particular neck of the woods. I'm not looking at the results right now. Let me see if
I'm looking at them right now.
that we can,
okay,
tell us, give us an update of what's going on.
Yeah, Biden's still sitting at 85 points. He needs to get to 270. Trump is sitting at 55. However, what we should really be concerned about is Florida, who is they're about 2 percentage points ahead at 87% reporting right now. They have 29 electoral votes, so that won't put him in that would actually put him above it. And then Georgia's only 19% reporting, and they're 56 Trump to 42 Biden right now.
You know, one of the things that gets me with this stuff is, so what you're looking at, Doc, 85 for Biden, 55 for Trump. You've run over to CNN. CNN has it 37 for Trump and 30 for Biden. I mean, does anybody have a reason why this discrepancy always happens? Every year we're looking at something like this. MSNBC is going to be reporting something different, I'm sure. Why is there such a discrepancy? Is it just based on their sources?
Well, I don't know. I have AP real-time reporting right now, and AP has actually been the most reliant one in 2016. They called it. They were like within 99% of, you know, the vote, and so they pushed it to the Supreme Court. But, you know, what they had anticipated was actually the case. And historically, the Associated Press has been the one that is, you know, much more reliable. So I just go to their stuff. But what it could be is that you have, so right now we've got Vermont, we've got Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland all in. So those are all in, and they're all Biden.
As expected.
In Illinois.
Yeah, and those are states where they have 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So their electoral votes are really, really small. Yeah. That's why I'm saying the ones that and historically it's like, okay, if you win Ohio, you win, right? Ohio honestly only has 18 electoral votes, but they're kind of like the pulse of the country. Yeah. Like they're like,
because they're always so close.
Ohio goes, the perfect mix or whatever. So, and right now they're 56% Biden, 42% Trump, with 49% reporting right now. So we can cross our fingers, eyes, and toes on that if we're going there. Strangely enough, Texas is leaning Biden, so we'll see 42% reporting.
Now, what percentage of the vote is in Texas right now? Do you have that?
Oh, we're at
27%.
I have 42% reporting for AP.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. Back to that question from Ed. Back to the question from Ed. I think, as you rightly said, Shinda, the AP, they are the official source that everybody would pull from because they're the Associated Press. But different networks, they have their own way of making their conclusions. So you will have CNN saying, we're not ready to make that call just yet. Or MSNBC will say the same, we're not ready to make that call. So they will delay until they're comfortable. If you remember in 2000, when I went to bed when CNN called Florida for Al Gore. And next thing you know, I got up and I heard.
I went to sleep at 3 a.m. 3 a.m.
He's on conceding, man.
Right, and I think that's what we're looking at for Trump. I mean, and for various reasons. I mean, the jail time thing, and him.
Did you say real time or jail time?
I said jail time with a J. With a J, yeah. I don't. I wish the Democrats had like cojones, like they could really like say, you know what, you're going down, buddy. We got 20 of your guys in prison. Let's have you join them. I wish they had the frijoles to do
I was expecting that to happen this time around because of how strong the Republicans came when Trump came into office. And I expected the Democrats to say, you know what we're doing isn't working. We've got to meet this, kind of brash attitude with the same kind of brash attitude, but they still haven't done it. And so I don't, just like you said, I don't think it has served the Democrats well to not come out as strong with what they believe and what they want and what they are trying to do and what their speech. It was interesting. It was a few weeks ago. I was driving through Newport Beach, and there was a Biden parade going on with all the flags, and just like the Trump parades. But the Biden parade was a bunch of Priuses. And the Trump parades are a bunch of, monster trucks and stuff like that. It just shows you, the difference even in the people that, if you're driving a Prius, you're probably not going to be the most brash person out there.
Well, they're always over. They're always over. It's like we lost the Civil War, man. We gotta come. We gotta bring it. We lost the Civil War, like the Civil War. Are you serious? Like 18.
Man, you just tagged on the Prius people, man.
But it's true.
Hybrids, man. Those hybrids, man. We got a hybrid too. We got a hybrid.
Exactly.
When you talk about Republicans, though, and we only have to look back to Richard Nixon for the response to Bill Clinton. The reality is that the Republicans came in wanting to punish the Clintons, punish Bill Clinton. In the same way that Trump came in with the bully pulpit, a crusade against Obama. Still talking about Obama 4 years later. Dems come in, and in that spirit of reconciliation, this Lincoln-esque desire to be above the fray, to heal the nation, to heal the wound, so on and so forth. There's always this olive branch that's extended that is to the detriment, because then people walk away going, well, Nixon really couldn't have been that bad if you pardoned him. And this person couldn't have been that bad if you let it go. It would be a hard pill for me to swallow if Biden-Harris win tonight, and then a month from now, there's some overture toward forgiving Trump for the malfeasance and everything else we've seen when they were attempting to impeach him last year. Now we're talking about not just who wins the White House, we're talking about the battle for legacy and for history. And that's just as important. Trump could very well, in defeat, become the patron saint of this movement toward extreme politics on the right that began with the Tea Party, right? Actually began before the Tea Party kind of reached its, you know, a little bit of its peak with the Tea Party and crazy candidates like Sarah Palin, and its illogical extreme with Donald Trump. But now in this post-Trump world where there's no truth, you can't trust the media. You know, it's funny, we're sitting here talking about polling. The fact of the matter is I trust the weatherman more than I trust the pollsters. How notoriously unreliable the weather is. But at least the weatherman doesn't tell you the morning you wake up and there's supposed to be a snowstorm, you know, he or she can't walk outside and go, yep, I was wrong. But they gotta make that call. They'll fudge to the very end. But my concern is for the long term is the Republican Party now is Humpty Dumpty. And who's going to put that machine back together again in any way that functions? Democrats have been in this position before and they've squandered that. And to Shandel's point, it would be nice if you had somebody that came in and said, look, like the Civil War, you go back to that model. Richard Dana from Pennsylvania said it, the grasp of war theory. You lost the war, so you are punished accordingly because that is an act of war against the nation. So you need to be punished. We come in and go, we're handing out hugs, all, you know, $30 toward all.
Let's go back to
what we're missing, though. I think what we're missing is that this is truly this is one party. I think that's what we're missing, because if you look at Biden, okay, Biden is a Northern Dixiecrat, okay. Biden and Richard Russell, Dickie, you know, they were super tight. And Richard Russell was the one who said, I will never, ever allow any type of amalgamation of the races or any type of social equality to exist in our southern states. And that is Biden's mentor. And this is one of the things that we miss. And the same thing with LBJ. They were all the same party. They were all the same party.
But then Shandel, when you look back though, I think I agree with you 100% on that. But then I do believe there is a problem, a political problem with the Democratic Party. Yes. When Barack Obama came in, he's a black man. And they had an issue that they could have gone for the jugular with Dick Cheney. And nobody could have questioned with Halliburton and all the things that took place in Iraq. They could have gone at him. What did Obama say? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. When Joe Lieberman from Connecticut, he went against Obama, and Obama could have just cut his throat. Obama said, no, we're not going to do that. It seems like the Democrats have this I don't know, they're politicians, but I don't believe they have an understanding of politics. Last week or the week before, when they were talking about the Supreme Court justice, they are deciding, okay, how are we going to approach this thing? They announced a week before, we're not going to give a quorum. Why you announce a week before that you're not going? You just don't show up on the day. They can plan for you a week or two out because they know you're not going to come with a quorum, so they make a plan for you. I don't believe they are. I don't want to use the word ruthless, but I don't believe they're politically
savvy. They're not. They're not savvy at all.
And you know what you're mentioning there is like a history in this country of whether it's forgiving those who have brought injury and hurt, harm, and danger to others. So like, you had the Civil War. So you have the Civil War and you have the South that loses. So the South loses, but then they create this narrative like, the war was not over slavery. It was over. It was over our, just
sovereignty. It was over
sovereignty. Yeah, the right of the states. And now, if you try to become a citizen in this country, you are asked a certain set of questions. And when you are asked one question in particular, it asks you about the Civil War and what was this war about? And it's about sovereignty of the states, and that's the answer. And the answer is it's not a right answer. And so the crazy thing is that
they fought to put on the test. Yeah,
exactly. And but then that goes back to a whole history of how we have conditioned and taught and trained and massaged history so that egos would be soothed and nurtured, instead of being, honest and just transparent. Hey, this is what happened, and then we can deal with it.
They are all one party. I mean, it is, and that's you see, we want to say that, we have the Democrats here, and then we have the Republicans here. Well, we know historically that they were switched at one point, right? Well, even though when they came to what we know it is today, a lot of the people who were Republicans are now Democrats, and vice versa. And they're still very chummy, and they still have very, very complex relationships. And they have very complex relationships with the Negro problem, right? And the Negro problem has always been the problem that all of them, honestly, low key agree on. They all agree on the Negro problem. Hey, listen, I'm going to say this. I'm going to play good cop. And then I want you to say this. We all know you don't like them, and everybody knows you don't like them, but they don't know I don't like them. So what we're going to do is we're going to say Civil Rights Act. We're going to say, let's integrate the schools. But what we're going to do is we're just going to divest from their Black schools, and we're going to take all the money and put it into the white schools. And we're going to just close everything in the Black neighborhoods. And then they'll be forced. And then you're making money. You're making money, and they're going to be beholden to you. Another set of slavery. Because now, not only have we lost everything in our Black communities, and as one of the gentlemen on the last episode I was here with you said, he said 50,000 Black principals became 50,000 pastors. Wow. And that's what happened. So when we look at how, when we negotiate, or when they're negotiating these things for us as disempowered people, we really, because in reality, none of it benefits us. None of it. You can't tell me that a white Republican is going to go after a political stance that is going to benefit me and that has no benefit for them.
You see, one of the things that I think the Democratic Party is afraid of becoming is a part of the Republican Party. So if we were to champion those causes of removing him and not forgiving Trump, then we would be dubbed as equally, divisive, and it would look really bad. Now we would embolden those guys who are already emboldened. Now they would feel like they really have a country to fight for, because we would have taken their hero and we would have put him in jail where he belongs. However, someone's going to come and say, at what point in time do we start moving forward? Do we start saying, let's work on changing some of these things? And I think the answer is right to what you're saying, in that we have to pay attention to our local things, because their parties are practically one and the same. They're all looking at the Black problem or the Black issue or the Black vote, whatever they want to call it. And so when we start paying attention, as Pastor Jenkins said, we got to start voting like we're for. We got to actually start paying attention, understanding what a yes vote means here and what a no vote means here, and being strategic with those responses so that you can put people and then holding them to office. I don't know how we're going to hold Kamala to office. I don't know that we can in any specific particular way. She's going to have assignments from Biden that she's pretty much going to have to follow along and do. But it would be great to find some way to meander through this thing, should Biden win, that we're going to be looking back to say, okay, you know what? This is how we're going to hold you accountable, Biden.
But you can't. I love that point. And then the challenge for us is that the radical alternatives really make people uncomfortable. I'll give you a good example. National conversation about defund the police. No one's talking about all the Black female police chiefs who've lost their jobs in the last 2 months in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder, because they were ineffective in, this is the argument, which is in no way reflective of the work they were doing or the barriers they faced. I used to love to ask my students this question, though. I mean, we talk about political parties, but the joke is, I vote Democrat. I'm not a member of the party. None of us are members of the party. The party doesn't write me and invite me to their convention. The party doesn't check in on, I'm getting a bunch of texts from people these days talking about how you voting. But at the end of the day, I don't make any decisions that in any way influence the platform of the party, the candidates, who the front runners are, those types of things. So to Chandel's point, if we adopted that mentality with regard to how the parties treat us, we could be independent brokers, but that's always also hurt us historically. So when we go in and say, we're going to vote on the issue and what benefits black people, look what happened to W.E.B. Du Bois during the First World War. He backs Woodrow Wilson. Wilson comes in and segregates Washington, D.C., first president to segregate the nation's capital. You know, when we play that game, we always wind up in a position where, and I'll say this to Keith's point, which is a good one too, you don't wind up, you know, look, I lived in Delaware. So what I will say about Joe Biden is this: you can't stay in office that long under different regimes which are hostile to what you profess today. If you are in some way a chameleon, or you're true to what you telling us something different, but you actually true, and people trust you because they know at the end of the day, Fidel said it's all a conversation among complex people who, you know, Chelsea Clinton and Ivanka Trump are best friends. They best friends, they girls, right? Because they're elite. Now, again, people don't want to talk about it at that level, but at the end of the day, they'll argue and say, lock her up and say all of that, and then they'll be sending each other Christmas gifts. And we all, you know, balled up in the fetal position talking about, you know, what happened here.
You know, in Kwame Ture's book, Black Power, he talks about how Black people need to form their parties, you can't play that game, right? You cannot play the white person's game in their house. You cannot use the white person's tools to dismantle their mansion. And what we need to look at is, we need to look at what are the issues that are unique and that are specific to Black people. And how do we intend on moving forward in making sure that those issues are addressed by us? Because all power to Black Lives Matter or whatever, but I am not in the business of making demands upon people who have no interest in helping me be empowered. Making demands on somebody disempowers you. It does not empower you. So this is a challenge for me. This is a challenge for me. When I look at other Black people, when I look at the movie stars and the sports figures and all that, who have this money, like LeBron and like Michael Jordan just opened up another hospital. What we need to be really, really considering is, why did so many Black people die of COVID? Well, because we had people who had a vision for us dying, taking care of us. Okay, boom. Why do we have such horrible education systems? Well, because 73% of the teachers are white women who look at Black people as less than, and they have a deficit perception. Why do we have people who hate us educating our children? Thirdly, why can't we get a loan at a bank? Well, because obviously Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they're colluding to make sure that we can't do that. Oh, why can't we afford houses? Look at the tax rates that I was talking about earlier. We need to look at issues that are specific to us, and that can't happen in the Democratic Party because those issues are not issues for the general Democratic body. That's why Kamala can't speak to it. That's why Joe Biden has no clue about it. Because
but are we able to form a party ourselves when we only represent maybe 13% of the population in this country? You know, well, what is it that we can do?
And then all of this won't even matter, because whoever is president, that's whoever is president. But within your community, you're able to form something, a collective, something amongst Black people, specifically for Black people, that speaks to Black people's issues. And that's what we're looking for, because like I said, if Trump wins or if Joe wins, it's the same situation.
But is it possible for us as Black people to come together again? There were times when let me just throw this out there. Is it possible for us to come together as Black people again? You know, we had Black Wall Street, we had communities in the past that were destroyed, that were burned down, that were tore apart. And now it just seems like we're so divided as people of color when it comes to coming together, as though our the enemy has really put a divide between us and been successful in that. Is it too late? Are we able to come back together to do some of these things that we've done before? There are Black banks that exist, but how many of us have an account at Black banks, you know, going there to get mortgages and just to keep our money there, just to help the Black bank and help the Black economy? You know, many of us still don't even trust Black businesses. And when we go, we think that what we're getting is less than, you know, and so we won't even spend our dollars there. Is it too late for us? Can we come together again to benefit us as a people? And then there are those amongst us that say, why do we need to do that? Let's be part of the greater good, and be part of the greater society. Why do we need to be separate and be over here by ourselves and be a peculiar people as Black folk? Is it too late, or can we do some things?
But not even the greater good in that sense, Pastor, but also a global economy. I mean, this is part of the problem now, is that 70 years ago, 80 years ago, it was possible to talk about living in Harlem or Watts and building up. Even we talk about Atlanta, right, under Maynard Jackson. We can talk about Harold Washington and Chicago. I lived in D.C. under Marion Barry. People talk about how corrupt Marion Barry was, but for the African American community, having Marion Barry look out for the interest of Black people first in the District of Columbia made D.C. a very different place to live under his regime. Having said that, I think about what happened to Shirley Chisholm in '72. So you have a congressional Black caucus. You have African Americans recognizing the potential that's represented by a Black united front. You have a Black woman run for president, and the caucus wouldn't endorse her, right? And then she winds up in a situation where our folks have to play real politique. They start quoting Machiavelli. I got to go with the party. If we buck the Democratic Party, then what's going to happen to us down the road, and what will happen to my seat? I love Congressman John Lewis, but he his final letter to the American people laid it out by talking about the importance of the right to vote, but it's always predicated on coalition politics.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that
coalition politics doesn't serve us because we don't have enough power. It's an imbalance of power. That's why we can't have a coalition. We don't have the power to collaborate with people who are more powerful than us because their agenda always takes precedent.
And Yohuru, you talk. Go ahead. Let me just make this one quick point.
We all talking over you.
And then I'll let you in right after. But Yohuru, you touched on the point of globalization. With businesses, everybody, moving away from multinational, or just national to multinational, now to global. It's easy for those who are empowered to use globalization, and this is actually founded in research, that they can use this to perpetuate their ideology. They can use this, these connections on a global scale. And what happens is, on a local level, if we're not even connected to those things, if we're not even thought of economically, we're not even thought of socially, we can get left behind. And that's the thing that's very concerning to me, that unless we understand what's really happening on a global scale, what's happening just in my city, that's a small part of the whole thing, man. You got businesses coming into my city doing things in another country, and I'm actually here witnessing and not even knowing all the dollars that are flying, and not that they're always clean dollars. Some of them are even corrupt. But I'm just saying, we really got to understand how to look out for ourselves, not just on a local level, but even on a national level. And even as you look in the past, you had guys like Marcus Garvey that was looking out for Blacks in not just in one place, but in all countries. And maybe some people have some issues, and I'm not even going to name him because I know some people are going to get some issues with me. But there was a gentleman in Northern Africa who had an idea of all of Africa even having $1, and it didn't go too well for him. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of global thought and suppression and oppression that we are fighting against, even in our local area, but it's also happening in many areas around the world.
I'm just going to respond to you really quickly because I'm glad you invoked Garvey because it's a good example. But Huey Newton of the Black Panther Party in the late 60s talked about intercommunalism. So Newton got to the point where he said, look, we can't even talk about national boundaries anymore. You have to talk about it as the power of multinational corporations. The fact of the matter is these big corporations across boundaries actually control wealth and, as you said, determine narratives that then influence political structures. In some sense, when we're looking at Brexit, when we're looking at the kind of the rise of this moment where you've got the strong man like Donald Trump emerging and talking about local economy and all this other stuff, it plays into this idea that in some sense what Donald Trump's brand of populism, if you want to call it that, although it's not really that, is a reaction against this multinationals and tearing down the news is kind of the source of, so it's fake news if I say so on and so forth. The challenge there, though, is for us as a people is exactly what Tyndall suggested. Do we have access to infrastructure then to create in the absence of, or in direct contrast to, those systems which have come to define all aspects of our community. And unfortunately, what Kansas Avenue is doing, this is revolutionary. Bunch of black folks sitting around on election night talking on their own airwaves about the election. So that's revolutionary, but we'd have to replicate this so many times over in so many pockets to kind of build the political agenda that Ice Cube conceives of in his mind. But the reality is the vast majority of our folks went on to Twitter to talk about it. And that's the problem.
Hey, we're doing what we can in our little pocket of the woods. We got Claudia Allen. Claudia, go ahead, talk to us tonight. And then we have Patty Savoy that joined us as well.
So I am so grateful to be here with all you guys. Thank you for the invitation. I always find this conversation to be extremely interesting to me because I guess I do need. I'm going to ask a question because I guess I would like to just understand a little bit better because I am kind of just running the numbers in my head, right? So if we make up 13% of the national population and we feel as though that's not enough bodies to properly build a coalition with the powers that currently exist, then how would we successfully build a party within a system that would have any kind of influence, impact, to create any kind of structural change? Now, I do feel like there is a lack of understanding within our communities about how politics and policy works. Mm-hmm. So I do think that we have a tendency to focus so much so on the presidential election that everybody and their mama goes out and stands in line for 3 and 4 and 11 hours to make sure that Joe Biden becomes the president, but nobody stands in line for 15 minutes to make sure that you have the proper educational superintendent, to make sure that you actually have the right person as your sheriff commissioner, right? So there are many of the issues that afflict Black communities that actually cause us to be angry, upset, and on panels is intimately determined by local county officials that are either appointed or elected. And so it comes down to, are we participating in our local elections? There's a part of me that really just does not want to give time, energy, and effort to building a Black party that is going to have little to no impact on the structure when there is a structure in place that, for example, I live in PG County, Maryland. I find out there's a woman named April, I can't remember her last name, 39, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, who's going up for judge in my county, Circuit 7. I research who April is. I see April is passionate about recidivism rates. I put April in office. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like we don't actually do the work that's necessary on the local level to where it's going to impact us. Because just like my sister said earlier, Joe can get in, Trump can get in. The most that would probably change for us on the ground is we probably just wouldn't have as much racist rhetoric coming from the Oval Office. But it's not so much that we're going to see a drastic, huge change in policy. And so if we want to see a drastic change in policy, I feel like that comes down to local election.
I wish you had jumped in earlier, girl, because we in the same choir. You singing alto, I'm singing soprano. Or maybe.
Come on, let's harmonize, sis.
Well, but that's the thing.
You can't forget the tennis now. Can't forget the tennis.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Moment real quick. Can we have that? Can we have that?
That's the reality. We're not afraid. We're talking about not being able necessarily to amass the numbers, to amass the bodies, to amass the leverage that we're talking about. I want you to consider the fact that every single Black vote is trying to be suppressed right now. That speaks volumes. Now, I don't care about the general. I don't care about any of that kind of stuff, the major elections, the Biden, the Trumps, whatever. Yeah. But when we look at how we as a bloc are the monolith that they conjure up, how we vote as a bloc, that vote is so precious. It is so, and I think that a lot of times we don't look at it as with the power and with the might that it has. If you said to me, April is about to be judge up in my city, and I said, well, hey, let's get all the sisters together. Let's get everyone together. Let's mobilize, right? That's what I'm talking about. Now we're a block. Now we started something. Now let's grow that. Now let's start looking at how we can ensure that we have food security, for single moms or for anybody in our community? Why is there only one grocery store in a 5-mile radius? That's absolutely absurd. Now, why don't we have hospitals that cater to Black people by Black people?
Well, we've got to get people thinking about those things.
No, we get way too sensitive real fast about somebody's error. April slept with somebody's husband, and all of a sudden now she's the devil's spawn. She's not allowed to be, you know, the judge or whoever. And that's we get so sensitive about sin that it's like, oh shoot, whereas our other people, they don't really care about your sin. No. That's what they're saying to control us. Remember, religion was used as a tool to make sure that we stayed in the pen and we stayed, we stayed where we belong. So listen, they know everything about your boy. That stuff that just came out recently about, it was I think it was on Netflix, about that one white guy who was doing all that crazy stuff. Trump's name was all over the documentation. Trump's name was all over the documentation about that, and it never comes up to stop him from doing anything. I'm not saying, oh yeah, we should definitely turn a blind eye. What I'm saying is this is a great idea. Let's pull this 13% together and let's be like the Lord, mustard seed, and we do great and mighty things. But the fact is, as long as we keep sitting by and saying, oh man, I'm finna tell on you over here doing these great things, but you know what you do? You be messing with your students. You be grading on a curve that just affects only those particular few. And so we don't want you in office at all. We got to stop that sensitivity when it comes to that and realize that we're stronger together rather than sitting there critiquing and pulling each other apart.
Can I think, Claudia, count, please. Give us the count. Where are we?
Yeah.
What is the AP saying right now?
It's there in the chat.
I wanted to circle back to something that Claudia was addressing, which is so key, the local elections. And if anyone needs any indication of how important that was and the power of states, look at what happened during the pandemic. The president was saying all kinds of things about the pandemic, but at the end of the day, it was in the state's control. And we vote on based off of those local leaders, their ideas, how they will handle them. And that literally impacts your health. And then on the local level as well, those judges, those people who are running the schools, other things of that nature are so hugely important because you live where you are and you get a chance to vote on how high the rent goes, which is something that we talked about here in California. We talked about incarceration rates, what will be considered a felony and what won't, all these different types of propositions. My longest part of homework this past election really had to do with the propositions and those things that were going to impact me here in California each and every day. I think about how it's going to impact everyone. And so I love what Kansas Avenue do. They have a conversation about propositions. I think we need to have more of those. Those are incredibly important. We need to understand the power that judges have. That's huge and that's important. And then us coming together as a community to really understand this whole 13% and us coming together as a Black community and others is really, really important so that we understand what it is that we're voting for. And not only that, why we're voting for it is key. So thank you, Claudia and others, for bringing that up, because the local elections, I can remember not just every 4 years, but every year there's some kind of election that we get a chance to vote on. There was one that came out that was dealing with plastic bags. I'll never forget it. I think it was 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. The same day it was voted, there was no more plastic bag, or you had to pay for it. It was the same day.
In California.
I went to the grocery store the day before. It was free. The next day I went, it cost me 10 cents a bag.
Yeah. And it was a different kind of bag.
And it was a different, so they were ready. So that let me know already that this stuff doesn't happen by accident and they are ready for it. And we must have the same mindset and be clear about this so that we can bring about change and really impact things at our local level, which has a trickle up effect in some ways as well.
Guys, you know, it's and I'm glad you brought up Barone about the biggest homework assignment was, you know, literally going through all the props. You know, the thing that blew my mind, though, was the amount of money that is being put in to getting these propositions for you know, the cast that wanted their way, you know, and you can see for a few of these propositions when you look on Cal Matters, and we don't want to just make this a California thing, but they disclose like, hey, this is how much money this group is putting in. This is how much funding they're getting from here. And I think we have to also be aware of the financial piece of it. I mean, there's a big there's big financial backing behind a lot of these propositions because people want things to work for them. They want things to work for how they want. So the local election is big time. But I think that was one thing that caught my attention was like, yo, a lot of these people are putting millions of dollars behind these props.
You're right about that. We can recognize that when we see it in a Senate race, like the current race between Lindsey Graham and Jamie Harrison in South Carolina. People say, well, where's all this money coming to support Jamie Harrison? And we recognize outside influences, although Lindsey Graham also raises money from outside influences. But at the local level, we don't really interrogate ALEC, the American Legislative Caucus, and how it is funding and promoting and writing legislation that it then gets local politicians to pass. The National Rifle Association, back when we were talking about Trayvon Martin in 2012, people forget that the NRA, propped up by money from the gun lobby and gun lobbyists and the gun industry, was responsible for a lot of those stand your ground laws, which are in every state of union, and concealed carry and all that other stuff. So this foolishness, as you're suggesting, is much bigger than the local is important. That's where we have the most direct control. But then the reality is recognizing how to cut off those spigots that end up influencing local. The last thing I said is we have a black mayor here in St. Paul, Minnesota. But when the city burned, people were quick to say, well, the black mayor should have been able to go out and the black police chief in Minneapolis and stop the burning. And the reality is, to Shandel's earlier point, as long as we're part of the system, then the expectation that our job is both the mayor and the racial coder who can bring healing and the magic Negro phenomena. Look, it's not, Melvin Carter's done a great job as mayor, including doing something I thought was very radical that people didn't understand was radical. He eliminated library card fees. Raise your hand if you were that black kid that got suspended from using the library because your mama didn't have transportation, so you couldn't get the book back on time. And then for the rest of the year, you couldn't write your term paper. I mean, these are the little things that end up, like when you get a person of color in there, they can make real change. But not if we hold them to standards of accountability, where the argument then is, like I was talking about these black female police chiefs who are losing their job, that somehow they should have been able to stop the violence because they're black. These structural issues transcend black faces in high places.
Well, let me ask the question. How do we get people to care? How do we get them to care about the local things, the smaller, they're big issues, but they're deemed as small issues. How do we get people to care? How do we mobilize people to now get involved, and they're voting on the local level? They are not just voting, but they're getting out and they're getting involved. They're putting their feet to the ground. They're showing up at events. They're letting their voice be heard. They're not, accepting just anything and just tolerating anything that comes down from people that are in office. How do we get people involved? And, one thing that I've always thought is that, okay, just as we push our young people to succeed, be doctors, lawyers, we tell them you can do anything and try your best. And in some households, they really do push their young people to go into certain professions. But one thing I never hear us talking about is encouraging young people to be politicians. That, yeah, you can join city council, you can run, you can be mayor, you can be governor, and that these are things that you can aspire to. I think that's one thing that we have to do more of, just as we push people to be doctors and lawyers and dentists and teachers and pastors or whatever. We also need to encourage them to be politicians. So that's my greater question. I know, Claudia, you had some things to say, but I want to throw that out to you. How do we get people to care more so that people are more involved? And then, Crichton, we want to hear from you. Thanks for showing up.
I mean, I think that it has to do with
you're muted when you get back on. Go ahead, Claudia. Sorry.
Oh, I think that it has to do with re-education. Like I was saying earlier, people don't actually understand the political process here in America. And so people genuinely believe that if a president, whether it was Barack, Trump, or Biden, Hillary, whoever, all they have to do is come in, they're going to write a law, and then everything will be better. And so a lot of people don't actually understand that. That's why there was so much disappointment around Barack Obama's presidency, because he went in and he did not come out with a series of policies that were explicitly black. Well, the House was also not on his side, allowing him to put forth any policy that was of any color, let alone anything that was explicitly black, right? So, one, I think that it comes down to actually re-educating our communities. I think that if we actually made civic education a part of some of our community-based services, then I think that we could properly galvanize and mobilize our people around various policies, issues, or questions, right? Barron brought this up about the plastic bags, right? One of the questions on my ballot out here in PG County was about funding our local libraries to renovate them, right? So if you potentially are reading this and let's say maybe you don't understand the language of what they're talking about all this budget stuff and you don't get what they're asking, you could potentially actually vote against something that is in your interest simply by virtue of the fact that you don't understand the language that they're using on the ballot. And so I think that if we were to really kind of come together and say, you know what, let's teach this stuff to you. Let's talk to you like Dr. Shindale was talking about earlier from the standpoint of how can we make you aware of how to get a grocery store in your community versus we as churches constantly working together to come up with some kind of a mobile feed where you can come to our pantry, you can come and get our stuff or whatever. That does not empower our communities. All that does is make our communities now dependent upon us instead of dependent on other external nonprofit organizations. But what if we worked with our communities and said, okay, we're actually going to organize and mobilize with you, get a grocery store here. So now you don't have to worry about hopping the 2, 3, 4 buses that you have to take to get to another district. And then the bus is only going to let you bring 2 bags of groceries on the bus to begin with. Now I've actually eradicated the issue to begin with. And with the new grocery store, that community probably can get new jobs. Now you have people coming in to be cashiers. You got people coming in to be baggers. You have people coming in to do stock shelves, right? So I think that we have to shift the way that we see community engagement. So far, we are only doing really good at charity. And this has always been my bag. I tell churches this all the time. We do a fantastic job of charity, meeting people's temporary surface level needs, but we do not do a good job with social justice. And social justice is about taking down structures. And if we are going to really be a part of changing and tearing down structures, that means that I have to stop giving you a turkey every Thanksgiving and actually get you a grocery store.
Mm-hmm. And then also when we're teaching those civic lessons, we need to also talk to our young Black boys and girls about being beholden to your community. Mm-hmm. Because I know that there are a lot of our Congress people and our local district representatives who will get a kickback if Ralph's comes into my neighborhood instead of Javon's grocery store that's selling me healthy food. I know that there's going to be a big old kickback for, a Kaiser coming into my neighborhood as opposed to a clinic or opposed to a hospital that speaks directly and specifically to my people's needs. So, and I don't know that we can teach that, but I know that that's something that people need to be held accountable for when you are representing me. And like we said, if we're looking at these local people, I know right now I've got some clowns on the ticket, right? I've got some clowns on our ticket over here, and they're shucking and jiving, doing a whole lot of stuff. And when we hold them to the line, we show up at those meetings and we say, hey, you know what? You haven't done what you said you would do, or you guys get what I'm saying. So in reality, this civic lesson is vital. But who are you representing? Who is funding this? Who are the people to whom you are charged? So that's a really huge, significant piece. Christian, I'm waiting. I've been waiting to hear you all week.
Crichton, come on, talk to us, man.
Crichton, sorry.
Oh, all right, no problem. So good evening to everyone. Ohio and North Carolina, and it's a done deal. But let me say this. So look, a major part of the problem here is that there is a very unclear relationship between Black people, their communities, and the larger national framework, shall we say. And because of that lack of clarity, it is a challenge for a lot of Black people to become active participants in their local communities, right? So, for example, Back in the day, and to some extent today, women would be involved with men romantically and otherwise because when they married, they took on the man's last name. If the man did well and had a prestigious job, then they would do well by virtue of their relationship and association with that man. And that put women in a position where they were socialized to entice or appeal to or seduce men in order to get into these positions where they could share in that man's reputation or whatever he had going on. That's how it was largely back in the day. And to some extent, it's still that way, right? Well, the thing is, it's a similar relationship that Black people have to white people in almost every institution here in America. We feel now that by association, we can come up, we can be something, we can be acknowledged, we can be embraced, we can, and as a consequence to that, we sort of fall in line with the socialization that teaches us to be that way and that reinforces that conception within us. So a lot of people don't have a whole lot of conviction when it comes to the local politics and even the national politics, because at the end of the day, many of them don't see that there's that much in it for them. They're kind of, playing that role to assimilate, to associate, to wait for that VP position that is offered to them in these white institutions that tell them that they have arrived. So apart from an education that encourages us to not continue in this role of perpetual servitude, to being business owners and entrepreneurs, and actually to overturn and to deconstruct these systems that help to perpetuate this these inequities and inequalities. That nothing's going to change because we're not going to really feel any deep sense of ownership. And people that get ahead of the people that are willing to play the game and assimilate. And this is why you don't have the level of engagement, in my opinion, that you might otherwise have.
Excellent.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Carmela, good to see you tonight. Conversation has been very interesting so far. We have individuals coming in and out, and we appreciate you all, showing up and giving us your hot takes and your thoughts on what's going on. And we've been trying to keep everybody up to date as to what's going on state to state. And before you know it, we will have most of these results coming in. I want to get back to this particular election. I was looking at a stat earlier in the day, and it said that the Democratic presidential candidate has won the popular vote in 6 of the last 7 presidential elections. 6 of the last 7. Yet we have still had Republican presidents pull this thing out because of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is something that we've had since the beginning of the country. But is this something that you all see is still viable? When we look at it, it gives so much power to states who have very little population compared to states with larger populations. When we look at, state by state, everybody has their 2 senators. But is that fair? Because the Senate seems to have more power than the House of Representatives, right? Which is more representative of the population of each state. And it just goes back to this country. And as Shindell, as you said earlier, that, yeah, there might be 2 parties, but they're all part of the same party. And that party, from what it looks like, is to keep white supremacy at the top of everything and what's in the best interest of the majority group of people in this country, to keep their interests flowing and to keep everybody else at bay and to throw them a bone or two every now and then to placate them. Is it time to change the system, to dismantle this electoral college? Does it serve us well? Is it serving its purpose? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
That electoral college is going to stay right where it is. It's going to stay right where it is. And the reason why it's going to stay right where it is because, like I said, it is one party. Once it serves me this electoral year, I'm going to be fighting for it to stay. If it's not serving me, I'm going to talk all I want to talk or whatever, while I'm trying to work it so that the next time I get up for office, it's going to work for me. There is a reason why this thing has lasted as long as it has, because it serves both entities. We get, we argue, we get upset. Oh man, my guy didn't win or whatever. But these presidential candidates, these senatorial candidates, they're getting huge lump sum cash hauls by the people who are sponsoring their, or who stand to gain if they get into office. So it is, all of these things are in place for a reason. It's all in place for a reason. That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't, as Black people, we don't need to be trying to play these games. These games were not in place for us to be a part of, or to be trying to play, or to be trying to win. That is and I'm not one of those people who think that politics is white people's business. I'm one of these people who knows, who understands that their politics does not serve us. As Crichton's book says, white pathology. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that we have been taught is, oh yeah, that's politics. That's how things go. But we are not a part of that. And try to get in it. Obama did a fantastic job of getting into it, but then we realized even still, he was not a part of it. So that argument about the Electoral College, I think that's a nice conversation to have. But I mean, in reality, what are we doing?
It seems like an ingenious system by those who put it in place to serve themselves, right? Because it is around for so long. For those that it serves, it's an ingenious invention.
It is, and it will stay that way.
It almost doesn't matter what happens, but we will get our way.
But this is what I was trying to allude to earlier. So much confusion around who we are serving as Black people here in America. We're essentially serving a white system that we get to play wife to, right? That gives us a sense of being somebody. This is what I'm speaking to. The Electoral College system was formed to benefit white Southerners, right? I mean, so we have to take a good look at these systems and these structures, and we have to ask ourselves the question, who are we serving? Whose interests are we serving? And then we have to, educate ourselves out and our children out of that, because those systems are not serving us. We are serving them.
Well, then this goes back to people that say, well, then why should I vote? Because it's all rigged. So why should I vote? But then we come back and we say, you should vote. Now, we just had a conversation about voting on the local level. But in the grand scheme of things, does it make a difference when you have these systems in place that are rigged against us? Should I continue to vote? What do you say to people who have that sort of attitude?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is why I struggle so much with this conversation, to be quite frank. Yes, first, let's start with something, right? Because I'm not sure that everyone that's watching is even aware of what the Electoral College is, where it came from, and how or why it works, right? Now, Dr. Crichton, he kind of, he spoke to this and said it was created for the Southerners. This is very true. It was created during the 1787, what was that? With the creation of the 3/5 compromise. So you have these individuals who are meeting and they're trying to come up with, how do we get proper representation within the Constitution? And should slaves be counted as whole persons, so that we as Southern states, as plantation, as slave owners, we can have more representation in the government, because we have more bodies physically in Southern states. All right. They then determined, nah, we're not here for that. Okay. So because this is not a conversation about race. This is a conversation about money. And it has always been a conversation about money. It's always a conversation about capitalism. They then determined that African enslaved bodies would be counted as 3/5 of one person. All right. So that this way the slaves could be counted, but not counted as whole persons, to where they would outnumber northern states in the government. All right. So that you now have the creation of this electoral college that is for the purpose of maintaining some level of some semblance of balance, quote unquote, according to them. But quite frankly, all it is a system that was to the protection and preservation of slave states and slavery. All right. So with that in mind, right, it is inherently problematic. Period. The Electoral College is inherently problematic. However, back to Dr. Schindele's point, it's not going anywhere. It's not going not nanwhere. Okay. Based on how this country has been created, designed, and structured, the Electoral College benefits whoever's turn it is to benefit. Now, are there ways to manipulate that system? Absolutely. For example, I know, probably just because I'm more educated and aware on how the system works and operates, when I moved from Michigan to Maryland to do graduate school, I sent my absentee ballot in the 2016 election back home to Michigan because I'm voting Democrat. And Maryland is going to go blue, whether or not I vote. Michigan, on the other hand, though, needs as many blue votes as possible for the Electoral College. So in the event that we need to swing Michigan blue, I'm going to send a blue vote home so that the Electoral College can be pushed, even though I'm residing here in Maryland. All right. Now, did it work? No. But at the end of the day, right, that's one vote, right? Now, what if you had umpteen thousands, millions of people who are actually thinking, and they're aware that Texas has 38 Electoral College votes. Connecticut has 7 Electoral College votes. Maryland has 3. I don't know how many, however many each state has, right? You become aware of the importance of each state turning a particular color. And then from there, you then begin to encourage people to vote and be informed voters from that perspective. It's not enough that we just encourage people to vote and vote blindly. We need to be encouraging people to be informed voters. Do you know who's on the ballot? Do you know what they stand for? Are you aware of XYZ? So that you are informed of the total process. And there's no point, in my opinion, in us wasting time with trying to figure out how to eliminate the Electoral College. That friend will be with us until Jesus comes. I think
it's a bunion, honey. That's a bunion. That ain't no friend. That's a bunion. But we know
that it's there, but it's uncomfortable. We don't like it to be there.
What we need to be having conversations, and quite frankly, like I also don't necessarily. I definitely understand what you're saying, Dr. Crichton, in terms of us as Black people valuing our own systems and structures and entities within our local communities. But I also think that, just for me personally, this is my own personal opinion, that we are an entity that exists within a larger system. And so either we participate in that larger system to impact our everyday lives, or we don't participate in that system and we allow that system to still impact our everyday lives. But there is no out to us creating a system within this larger system, because capitalism does not permit that.
But we did, and I think we can do it again. And this is
when did we do that?
Where my optimism. This is where my optimism comes from. Right?
Tell me when we did that, though.
Yeah, no, we did that. We did that when we had Black Wall Street, right?
But
we did that.
I'm not against.
I know.
What people are arguing for, though. I'm not arguing. I'm not against Black-owned businesses and banks.
No. But let's just wait. Just think about it. Just wait. Just imagine. Okay. So just imagine. So we're in this ecosystem, but we're also our own entity, our own fauna within that ecosystem that needs its own specific type of soil, its own specific type of sunlight, its own specific type of whatever. If we are not attending to that, we cannot be of any benefit to the entire ecosystem. And this is why our challenges have been sullied in a lot of ways. If we are not able to really build ourselves as Black people, we'll always look upon this as we have to acquiesce to this big system. But I see communities, granted, they're in different socioeconomic situations, but I see other communities of color that are able to do this, that are able to exist and utilize and leverage white dollars and white interaction to their benefit. But that is with an understanding that, yes, there is going to be some discomfort, but we have to do it for ourselves if we are going to be good for ourselves and good for each other. So this thought about, oh, well, we're in this white system and we have to learn how to interact. The problem is that there's always a challenge of the power imbalance, where our agenda is always usurped by those who are more powerful, who are more connected, who have a bigger social capital than we do. So if we're able to really condition something that creates an empowered Black base, then that issue is now solved, because you are now creating a power balance. The power imbalance says that me as a Black person, I'm here. That white liberal that's really trying to help my community and come in and build all these apartment buildings is now going to charge me rent that's going to be paid in their hood, now divesting from my neighborhood, because those taxes aren't going to my schools. Those taxes aren't building or helping Black-owned businesses in my neighborhood. We have to look at ourselves and each other as the people who will empower us. Thus, we can now be equal partners to that liberal white, or that whatever type of white entity that continues to divest from us and to continues to consume us. We can't always think. I mean, now I guess we're new. We're 50 years old, essentially, Black people in America really trying to do something, or having the luxury to do something. But the way we have to think about it is, you cannot ally with someone who is more powerful than you. You cannot have and when we talk about these allies, I know we want to say, oh, they're here because they have this power thing, but their agenda will always usurp yours. I don't care what you say. You've got the LGBTQ agenda, you've got the disability agenda, you've got all these other agendas. The white woman feminist agenda always will usurp you. Forget about it.
I agree. Let me say this. I've got to run to class, but let me just say this real quick. I agree. There are three levels at which Black people need to gain control and mastery: the social level, the economic level, and the political level. And part of the problem is we take too short a view. We think we have to do everything right now. No. When we talk about education, we need to educate our children across generations. And we need to, both in the church and in the larger society, we have to get away from this idea that we are here to serve other people and other communities. Until we get that straight, we'll never get anything straight. The idea that some of these systems, are here and will be here in perpetuity, I've seen too much history, even in my own lifetime, to buy into that. It's a question of the extent to which we commit ourselves to our self-sufficiency. That's what it comes down to. I'm sorry, but I got to run to class. Y'all be cool.
I guess
thank you. If you get a chance later on, just jump back.
When is that book dropping?
Go ahead, Claudia.
When is that book dropping?
I'm working on it. I'm working furiously on
man,
it.
I'm talking about it. I need to get that book, man.
I'm trying. All right, let's see y'all.
All right.
I guess.
All right, Claudia.
I
See you later.
guess there's a part of me that feels like maybe we're talking about completely different things, though, because I don't disagree with anything that you guys are saying. Mm-hmm. I feel like either we're having a conversation about galvanizing, mobilizing, encouraging self-sufficiency at the local level, Black-owned stuff, whatever, Black-owned bank, Black-owned grocery store, Black-owned whatever. Okay, that's fine. That's I just feel like that's a completely separate conversation from the Electoral College and our political system. Now, I do understand that they are intertwined and they intersect and they connect and things of this nature. But I guess I'm trying to understand, like what is the argument? Because I firmly and fundamentally agree that we as Black people in Black communities, similar to the Jewish community, right, if we use them as an example, should be taking care of our own. We should be circulating our dollar amongst ourselves. I firmly agree with that. I do not disagree with that. But we're on here to talk about the presidential election that's happening right now. So I guess I'm trying to understand, like, where
let me give you an example
so that I get building up our communities, but there's also the conversation of Joe is running for president.
Right.
Right. So college.
What did Joe say just recently? Joe said it is on the top of his agenda to ensure that the LGBTQ rights are restored and okay. That's a community. That community, I know here in LA, has invested in themselves. They have built up their community. They shop at each other. They have emerged like a growth, crazy. Why what we're talking about as far as Black empowerment, politically, or economically, within our stores and all this kind of stuff, is because when you solidify Black economics and you start mobilizing Black economics, then you become a presidential concern. We have not done that. So now it's, well, no, we need to collaborate with other people. In reality, if you actually consolidated Black dollars and you leveraged Black dollars and you weaponized Black dollars, you become a political force. That's why the presidential situation is what it is right now. I look at my fellow Orthodox Jewish community here, and truth be told, I actually used to be Orthodox Jew for many, many years. And I was in the community. And let me tell you something. On high holy days, when a car is parked outside of their house and it's street sweeping day, what happens to our car when our car is still parked and it's street sweeping day? We get a ticket or we get towed. But because of the political power that they have within their own community, they said, oh, heck no. They went to their congressman and they said, look, religiously, biblically, we are prohibited from moving our car. Every one of those tickets got absolved, and they move in a block that actually it influences and intimidates a lot of our Congress people here. So when we talk about what does that have to do with this? Oh, it has everything to do with this, because if we are able to weaponize that stuff, girl, it's unstoppable.
I guess so. I understand that. I guess I just wasn't getting where and what the conversation was about. Because I definitely
it's about a lot of things.
That. So there's a part of me that's just like, yeah, I get that. So what are we talking about then? Because
you're talking about everything.
Because this is because my thing is like what I dislike, or what I feel like happens a lot of times is we have these conversations and it completely it completely discourages Black people from voting altogether. Mm-hmm. So then the idea becomes, oh, wow, like I have no power. I have no influence. We aren't working together. The work has to be that we need to come together and create a bloc like the Jews. And I don't disagree with that. I believe that that's work that has to be done. But there's a part of me that feels like there needs to be a both and to the conversation so that people don't leave this thing feeling like, okay, well, they're telling us that we need to create a system within the system. And it doesn't matter what we do. We don't need to vote for the president. We don't need to vote for any of this stuff. It's like, no, the numbers and droves of Black people that have come out in these cities across the nation to vote in this election will intimately determine whether or not Trump gets reelected. And I think that that's critical, that people need to understand, like, yo, no, you do need to vote. It does matter. Your engagement and participation in this system absolutely matters. And when you finish participating in this system, go back to your local community and start doing the work that Dr. Shindale is talking about that will uplift and empower you personally and locally. But I just don't want there to be any confusion. I personally can't sit on a panel and let anybody think I'm advocating don't participate, create a black.
But we don't want anyone to think that this panel is about that. It's a both and type of thing. Is that we want people to vote in the current system that we have, but at the same time work for a better system, work for one that benefits you and benefits your community, just like those who have put this system in place are working and have worked for this system to benefit them. And so, yeah, it's what we've got. Let's do the best that we can with it. But at the same time, we've got work to do. And so we're talking about both things. The presidential election now, what are we voting, being informed about the issue, but at the same time, looking at my community and understanding that we are the ones that are going to take best care of ourselves. No one else is going to take care of us the way that we will take care of ourselves. So yeah, the conversation, and that's what this whole thing is about tonight. Just to talk about these things and to get them out and to encourage individuals. And I think part of that encouragement is for people that look like us to see people that look like them doing what we're doing tonight, talking about these issues, instead of them having to turn to other people to hear these conversations or to hear their conversations and not hear conversations that are pertinent to us. That, you know, we're doing what we can in our little corner to now have these conversations with people of color, men and women who are educated on the issues, to go out and speak about them. And hopefully that encourages some young person to say, you know what, I can be that person that goes forward in my neighborhood, in my community, and makes a difference. You know what, I can be that person that runs for office, you know, when I'm of age, or I can work in somebody's political campaign now. I can get word out or do whatever. And so that's it. It's about all those things. So it's not either or, it's a both and conversation with all of these types of things.
Sometimes I go to the NAACP every year, their conventions, they have some continuing legal courses, and they've been talking about voter education and voter rights for some time. In fact, last year they had Stacey Abrams there, and you know, you listen back to back, much like the way this conversation has gone, and you hear the systemic attack on voter rights, and you hear all of the traps that are laid for different people. And the natural question is, why should I even bother? And I've gone up and I've asked these experts. And, you know, one thing stuck with me and sticks with me even now is just the principle that one man told me. He says, you know, you can't give up because you haven't tried everything yet. If you haven't participated to the full level, if you haven't taken advantage of everything that is at your disposal, you can't give up yet. And so I think what we're talking about today is, you know, is yes, it's a wide range, but the incrementalism, I think, is something that's very important. Every little bit counts, and every little bit that we do count. I used to work as a reporter and on the local level, and what we saw, as many of you know, you go to a city council plan or a planning commission or a zoning board of appeals, not exactly the sexiest story, is not interesting, it's long and boring, but each decision made at that venue and in those meetings affects somebody's life in a real level. And if we paid attention to each one of these, and you know, I'm not saying everybody has to go to everything, but if you're interested in why certain things are in your neighborhood, then you need to show up at the meeting, and you have to be interested in that more than just in the presidential election cycle. This is an all the time thing, and it definitely does make a difference, the impact that it has, because, you know, even if the people that are there, they make a decision that doesn't go the way you want, the press is there, and you get to say what you need to say, and they put this out, they put it on social media, they put it in the paper, they put it on the television station, and everybody now understands the issue from your perspective and what the impact has on your community. And now you coalesce with other people who are with you. I think there are so many things to be learned by this. Yes, there's the big picture, but there's this picture right here that I have control over. that's the biggest thing that I wanted to say tonight. There is something that I have control over. This morning I got up early because I spent time on a voter protection hotline. And for me, that was very valuable. I voted, my family voted, but we learned so many different things that we want people to remember, regardless of what happens tomorrow. The things that we have to remember are the things that we absorbed or internalized through this really heated election cycle. Or number one, we have to remember, what have we learned? One, you got to plan ahead. How many people did I get on that phone with today who said, how can I register today? Oh, I'm sorry. Here in the state of North Carolina, registration is closed. Why did we get down when we need these precious votes and people still are not registered? What have we learned? You got to make sure that you got to plan ahead. I had a first-time voter in my house who says, I want to vote. And he went and he asked for that ballot to come back to him. But the ballot was via email. Now he's got to print it out. Well, where's the printer cartridge? Is out of ink and it's sunset. How am I going to get this now? You know what I'm saying? Let's plan ahead. And so these are things that we've learned and we're really internalizing. What have we learned? We got to work together. And so if we need to invest in the race like Jamie Harris against Lindsey Graham, we've learned that we can coalesce and use our funds to work and to help other people around. What have we learned? We have to learn how the process works so we know before we get to the polls what it means to be an inactive voter, what it means to be purged, what it means to be registered and ready to vote. These are some things that we have learned, and I believe every little step counts. So that's all I've wanted to bring. You all are high and mighty, and I appreciate it. I give much kudos and props to everybody here, your expert opinions. I do believe that the little bit that we can do on our individual level is very important. And regardless of whatever happens tomorrow, I still have to wake up tomorrow. And those children who are in cages, somebody's got to do something about that, starting now, right? Whatever is happening that is bothering you today is going to be there tomorrow, and you got to do something about it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. The work starts tomorrow. McBride, your mic is there. You go.
Yeah, that is kind of how we got to where we are right now, because we were trying to discuss what are some of the things that you're kind of expecting to change should Biden win, or things to do, if Trump continues to go. And that led us to the idea that it's great that we get in for the presidential vote, but we have to start really educating our folks on what it means to be in the local vote, and to pay attention to the different measures, the different props that are coming in your specific state or your specific city, wherever you may be. So I want to ask this question to those of you who don't live here in California. What are some of the things that are up for votes there? Are they called props in Maryland as well? Are they called measures? What are they called where you guys are?
We had questions where I live. We had
questions. Okay. And then are they numbered the same way? So, for example, did you guys have questions about rideshare stuff this year as well?
Nope.
Okay.
This is why this is what I want people to understand. The United States of America are like that united. It is an illusion. Each state is in autonomy, right?
I in united.
Right. Why? What's this man's name? Trump can say national shutdown, and Arizona and Florida can say, great idea, no thank you. Because each individual state operates in an autonomy. So it's the same way, right? So you guys are going to have questions or props on your ballot that are not on our ballot. I'm confident. I believe Carmela you live in Howard County, right, Carmela? I live in Prince George's County, Maryland. Now, technically, we might be maybe a 15, 20-minute drive apart, but I can guarantee you we had different questions on our ballots. So I had questions about circuit 7 judges. I had a question about library renovation. I had a question about the Maryland state budget. I had questions about renovating some of our local community colleges. I had questions about renovating the roads. Those might not have been the questions on Carmela's ballot.
They weren't.
So when you really think about it, right, even when we're going in to vote for the president, you are also voting about local budgets, local issues. You are not voting for a national budget. This is not a national question. This is not a national issue. So that I have to go and I have to figure out, okay, how does my vote right now impact PG County?
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, right, I learned this from some friends of mine who are Jews from St. Joseph, Michigan. And they were talking with me about the Jewish community. And we've brought them up a lot. Not to Dr. Schindele's earlier point, not only are they such a powerful bloc in the sense that economically they control things, but research has shown that they are also the bloc that has the highest tendency of voting in terms of the best interest of others and not the best interest of themselves. AKA, when they read the ballot and it says, we want to take, like one of my questions on the ballot was, hey, Claudia, we want to make gaming legal in the state of Maryland, so that people, if they want to gamble on sporting events, they have the legal right to do that. But we also want to take the monies that are garnered from the gambling and put it towards public education. Now,
set it up. I hear you.
This is a great example, right, Carmela? Now, there are those of us who religiously disagree with gambling. So you would then go to your ballot. If you're not Jewish, you're going to go to your ballot. You're going to say, oh, Jesus does not want us gambling. The Lord is not going to be pleased. And then on top of that, we're using the gambling money for the schools.
Oh my Lord.
God is not pleased. That's your personal religious opinion, right? Now, I'm not saying don't vote your conscience. I'm just making an example. You then vote that on the ballot, right? Let's say $200 million from that particular investment could have gone into maybe Baltimore City schools, maybe Prince George's County schools, maybe different area schools in the state. And they never see those funds because you and several other people voted what you personally religiously believe. The Jews don't vote like that. The Jews read the ballot and they see and they say, hey, man, you know what? I personally disagree with this particular act that's on the ballot, but I see the greater potential, the greater benefit to the larger community for me voting yes to this question on the ballot. So I'm going to vote yes to this question on the ballot, even though I personally disagree with it. And so I think that more of us need to come together and understand what's happening on the ballot and vote like that. Because I might come to the ballot and say, you know what, my kid goes to Pine Forge, or my kid goes to so-and-so's Adventist school, and I go to so-and-so's Adventist church, and I work for so-and-so's Adventist building. And so none of these things, minus the budget for the roads, impacts my personal life. So then you make decisions that are going to impact only your personal life and not decisions that impact the greater good of the community. And I think that that's probably one of the greatest disservices that I feel like some religious entities, particularly evangelical religious denominations, do when they come to ballots, is that they don't vote the interest that is best for the larger community that they reside in. They vote their personal opinions.
Well, you know, I do have to interject on this one, because I think that is absolutely the case. The challenge, though, with it is when you've got a community of people who are so marginalized that their needs are idiosyncratic, that their needs are nuanced from the greater good. When I vote for money going to the schools, or when I vote for gaming, then in many instances does not impact them. And this is why I say that.
That's fair.
I know it sounds crazy, but this is why I say it. Earlier, before you had gotten on, we were actually talking about a measure like that on one of our ballots here in California. And in California,
16.
We have a couple of measures that were looking to tax our properties additionally in order to send money to invest in schools. And who wouldn't say yes, right? Yes, my tax, I can pay a little bit more to put into schools. But what that does for California is it makes it like a lot of your states, the rest of the states. And I'm just reiterating this, guys who've heard this before, but this is for their benefit. What happens in California is that we've got a flat property tax rate. So if your house, if you're a white person and you live in, in Beverly Hills or whatever, and you paid $300,000 for your house, which would never happen, but whatever. Yeah. And I, live in Inglewood and I pay $300,000 for my house, and I'm a Black person. We are all going to we would all pay the exact same tax rate.
Okay.
It's not that way in every other state in the nation.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you're taxed based on your race.
For sure.
And those taxes are rationalized by, well, we need to put more police in your area.
Yeah.
We need more, your areas are much more needy. So all of these additional taxes, this 13% additional tax that you pay is for all of those things, even though our police
services you need.
Yeah. All those services are basically killing you anyway, because the cops are shooting you down on the street and you don't have any, food security, but whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So these things on our ballot, like if I were to say, all right, you know what? I do want to think about the other people who could benefit. The reality is that the monies that are allocated for schools are allocated in this way. Affluent schools get $23 billion more per year than schools in Black neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But my school, even with the money that it has now, the schools here, they're crap. We've got teachers in them who are not doing jack. Yeah. My son is being taught by, well, no, he's not, but this is the hypothetical. Our Black kids are being taught by people who hate them and who don't want to see them succeed. Why am I going to disadvantage myself and other people like me for something that will further disadvantage people like me? Because there is no recommendation for improving what's happening in our schools. In fact, is getting worse. So when I'm talking about us doing for us, the FUBU method, that's my, conjured up. Thank you, Damon John.
For us, by us.
Right? That's my FUBU, right? Yeah. If we are looking at doing some stuff, I'm saying, let's look at what these measures are saying to us. No, I don't want to tax myself. I'm going to take that additional money and we could start investing in some schools that are really going to help us, that are really going to do some things for our kids. Actually making sure that our Black male teachers are able to get into the teaching arena, because they're the ones who have been documented to be the best teachers for all kids. I mean, a study just went out showing that they have been the most effective teachers for kids, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of race, regardless of anything. And we have a dearth of Black male teachers, but we got 73% white women who are jacking up our kids. So like you said, that kind of education, it is very important. And the Jews can afford to do it because they have got, like I said, that power. They have got a power balance that helps them to, I have the luxury of voting this way. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
So I want to come back to the national.
I just want to give her to your point as well. Back in 2017, and I was aware of this just wasn't gonna, be to the point, but you're also absolutely right, because back in 2017, Baltimore, when there was a period of time in January where, let's say, about 80 furnaces in schools up in Baltimore public city schools went out. And you guys saw back then, this picture went viral of this 5-year-old girl in a kindergarten class with a winter coat on because it was January. And so everything went viral. Everyone was like, yo, what's going on in Baltimore that y'all dealing with? Well, 80, like across the city, like 80 furnaces in Baltimore City schools went out across the city at the exact same time, right? So everybody storms the education superintendent meeting, right? So I'm there with a couple other people, and one sister, one mother from the community, she's up on the mic. And she did this so well. She was talking about how the state of Maryland owes Baltimore City schools $60 million from the casinos that they recently made legal. So once again, just like you're saying, we come to the ballot. We say, yes, you can use XYZ dollars from your budget to do XYZ thing. And those funds do not make it to Baltimore City area schools. They make it to Montgomery County. They make it to not Prince George's County, but Howard County. They make it to some of these more affluent counties in Maryland. But the city of Baltimore is like, you literally owe us. Like, you literally owe us $60 million. Where's our money? We want the check. Kind of a joke.
So now you voted for something that you didn't agree with, and you still didn't get the money. Okay, that's
right. So listen, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here right quick, ladies, before we continue going on. I want to. Okay, Doc, it's good to have you on. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for jumping in. I want to go right back to the national conversation going on. I want to say welcome to Alan Reinhardt. Also want to say welcome to Julius. Listen, guys, it's good to have you on here. Let's go back to the national conversation. Julius, talk to us about what you're seeing, what you're feeling like you're experiencing as we look at, where we are right now. Presently, I think AP is reporting Biden 131
right now. I'm gonna put him in.
And Trump at 92. We're going to get those put up even more. But what are you seeing right now, Julius, and even Alan? Either one of you can respond. What are your thoughts?
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir. We got you.
Awesome. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me on. It's shaping up about as expected. It's going to be close. The national polls that we were getting early on, they showed Biden ahead, but everybody understood that those are the national polls. We have an electoral college, and we really have to focus on the key states, the battleground states. A state that I'm looking at right now is Florida. Surprisingly, a lot of the votes are, I'm looking at the New York Times website. It says they have a map on there that's kind of very informative about how many votes have been reported. And it says there's a 93% estimate of votes reported, and it has Trump at 51.2 and Biden at 47.7. Of course, with the caveat, this is all very early. We probably won't have a definitive winner for some time, but it's going to come down to these states: Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. And I think it's going to be closer than a lot of the national polls were indicating. It's going to come down to those states, and Trump is going to make a push. And it just comes down to, can Biden hold on and get enough votes to withstand that push within these key states?
The state to watch really right now seems to be Virginia. They had called it earlier, and they retracted that call. They had called it for Biden, but now it's back out, and we have Trump leading with over 300,000 votes. Man,
interesting.
That is very interesting. That's one that is surprising because Virginia was not even seen as a toss-up state.
Yeah, it's again, it's going to be close. Watch out. There's a lot of talk about shy Trump voters, and the fact that maybe they don't answer that they're going to vote for Trump, but when it comes down to it, they vote for Trump, and then you see it in the results. It's going to be close.
But
what does that say?
We also have to consider the voter suppression situation. That we cannot, look at this and say, oh, well, there's so many people that said that they weren't going to vote for Trump, and then they ended up doing. No, I don't think honestly that there are that many Trump people nowadays that are so like, oh, I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Trump. There are not that many of them. No, I don't. I really do. I think that people now are so emboldened that heck yeah, I'm voting for Trump. I'm red-blooded American, you know, that type of thing. But in maybe in our circles, but I think that there's not the majority of them that would be that. I think that what we're seeing now, because like this fight that just went through with Pennsylvania, Trump was trying to get them to not count certain votes if they came in after whatever, and the Supreme Court said no, they get to count everything. But this type of stuff is what we're seeing. We're seeing governors okaying the tossing of votes. We're seeing non-counts from certain in Texas. This whole Houston thing, that just happened either yesterday or it was yesterday. They were like, well, we want to not count Houston, and the judge was like, no, you got to count Houston. Like, why wouldn't you count Houston? So it's really there's a lot of stuff going on right now where when we start saying, okay, well, I'm surprised at this state. Well, not necessarily, because especially if you have a Republican governor,
yep,
it's going down. They are authorizing everything. Okay, everything. So
and
should voting registration
and so many of these polling places having been shut down as well.
Exactly.
Pandemic.
People driving 2 hours to have to vote, standing in line 4 hours to have to vote. Yeah. They have taken us back to pre-civil rights era, to Jim Crow. I mean, that's really where we're going.
So we need another Voting Rights Act. Is that what we're saying? We need another Voting Rights Act to protect voting. Exactly. Now, do you think that everyone should be registered? Every citizen should be registered at 18 automatically. There are some states, I think there's 20 states that allow same-day election registration. You know, so if you just sat around doing nothing and then just today just got the unction to just go and vote, you can go down and register and vote in about 20 states. But then that means that there's 30 states where you can't do that. And then there's other states, you know, where registration you have to go through whatever. But should it be something nationwide where as soon as you turn 18, because you're a citizen, it's your right that you should be automatically registered to vote, or should we have voter registration?
I mean, even if it's automatic, you would still have to go in and get it. You know what I mean? Like, so I grew up in Michigan. So when I turned 18, I had to go down to the DMV. And when I went down to the DMV to get my driver's license, I went down there. And also, you know, they ask you, are you registered to vote? Do you need to get registered to vote? So I feel like, you know, it's a both, you know, I don't know. I feel like even if it's like automatic, you'd still have to go somewhere and get it. You'd still have, it's like taxes. Like taxes are automatic, but you still got to file. You know, so
which is another question for another day, because if you file it wrong, they tell you did it wrong. So why do I need to file if you already know the numbers? You know, so another question for another day. But these two candidates that we're looking at tonight, this is the first time in history that the country is voting on two people over 70 years old. What does that say about the state of the country? There's nobody else out there besides these two individuals. How are you all feeling about the two individuals that we have to, you know, in terms of the presidential election? Are we choosing between the two, you know, the better of two evils, or is anyone here excited about the candidate that they voted for? And Alan, we haven't heard from you yet. Talk to us.
You know, you haven't heard from me. I'm very happy to hear everybody's perspective. You know, because of my role with the church, publicly, I have to be very careful and nonpartisan. So I can't let it all hang out here tonight in many respects. And so you're going to have to kind of, cut me some slack there, right? But I do think that, Biden he's a known quantity, right? He's been with us for a long time. He's very experienced. And so, I'm very comfortable with him as a candidate, regardless of age. I do think that a lot of this election is going to turn on what the next generation does. Do they come out in force? Do they say do they express their view about how they feel about how the country is going? I know my kids have all been very energized about this election, where they've been pretty blasé in the past. So I think, how our young people get engaged. To me, the most positive sign tonight is the kind of turnout we're getting. We're expected to get 150 million people out to vote.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
I think that's fantastic. We've all been worried about, the voter suppression and all these efforts to keep people from voting, the slowdown of the Postal Service. But it looks like people are actually getting to vote. In my monitoring, I don't know what anybody else is seeing. I'm very happy that I'm not hearing stories of violence. I'm not hearing, LA was, they were boarding up stores in LA, in New York, in DC, right? Preparing for the worst. Gun sales are through the roof. Costco's out of toilet paper again.
Yes, what is that?
What is going on, right? Really? There's an election to go stock up on toilet paper? Have we lost our minds?
Are we surprised?
Right.
And I'm surprised at that, but are we surprised that we're not hearing reports of violence? Or should we have expected that? Because the narrative has been that there's going to be violence no matter who wins. They erected an unscalable fence over around the White House, is what they're saying.
Well, I'm glad. He wanted a wall, right?
No, I'm not surprised.
We've been preparing for violence and been hearing about it, but are we surprised that we haven't been hearing about it?
No, I'm not surprised, guys, because I promise you would have needed for government to have come in and shut down a poll an hour ahead of time. You would have needed a poll to open an hour or two late. You would have needed some kind of governmental mistake or some kind of Proud Boys show up somewhere where they actually didn't need to be. And in reality, all of those people who would probably drive a Dodge Challenger through a group of people, having a good time, were literally out voting. As we can see right now, the electoral votes map is not looking like it's changing from what 2016 was doing. It is like they seem to be voting straight along that same 4-year term at it as it looks right now. You got Maine showing a 51% vote for Donald. If Maine changes and goes red, it was split in 2016. So, whereas the people who would have caused the violence, if this wasn't a national election or something like that, you probably would see some stuff. But since people didn't actually get restricted in a real way, they just got fed this rhetoric that, be careful. And don't go out. Or you heard earlier today, there was like robocalls that went out that said, stay home, be safe, and things like that. The fact is, no one actually went and took somebody out of a poll and shut it down and messed it up. So this kind of stuff that we were hearing, I wouldn't be surprised if big businesses were behind this to push this so that Costco could once again, Alan, be out of toilet paper at a national election. Come on.
I wanted to, so I definitely hear what you're saying there with that, Pastor McBride. One thing I'll add that might be like another side to the story, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, they put together like a research report. Basically, they did extensive research on all the right-wing militia groups, and showed that those who are in partnership with the let me drop this in the private chat so you guys can check this out, because I found this today and thought it was fascinating. They show all the various right-wing militia groups who have partnered with local police enforcement, and they have identified which states are high-risk states for these militia groups to show up. And so the states that are at highest risk are Georgia, Wisconsin, Oregon, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so it's not so much that people, I think, are worried about violence from like protesters or BLM or individuals like that, who, you know, in persons of color who might react in violence due to voter suppression, but rather a lot of the conversation is around these right-wing militia groups who, if they do not get the outcome of the election that they want, if Trump does not become president again, then these particular militia groups will then enact violence, riots, etc. in these particular states. There are others. And so the idea is that because they have these partnerships with the police, some were going to polling places in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and doing a variety of intimidation tactics. But no, we have not seen any outright violence from these groups, but instead what we might see on tomorrow or come the weekend is, you know, outright anger, frustration, disappointment because their leader didn't get reelected. And so the violence might come after the effect. So it might not be happening now, but the research is also saying that they're waiting for a result. So I think that that's something to consider as well. If you are someone who lives in those states, that might be something that you might want to consider. And I think that's why in some states, you know, Costco and all these other joints are, you know, out of water and milk and bread and toilet paper again, because I've been seeing several articles where people have been coming out and saying, you know, are you prepped? Do you have all your stuff so you don't have to go out the house again? Because if you have to go out while they're burning stuff down or having a hissy fit in the middle of the town, you know, you might be unsafe. And so I think that's where some of the boarding up of the businesses and restocking up on goods is really coming from.
Yeah, I went out and I made sure that my fridge was full, that I didn't have to go out the next couple of days because I don't know what's going to happen. Now I'm in California, you know, it's pretty much a liberal state. If there's any place to be safe in a liberal state, then this is it. But I still just didn't want to be in the streets, right? Just didn't want to be out there in the streets. I made sure I went out and got what I needed to get.
We did have a little tussle up over in Beverly Hills the other day with Trump supporters and BLM. It was so, I mean, if that's a tussle, I mean, come on. They were like, oh, I can't believe you. And I'm like, now that's the kind of argument I like. I mean, you know, nobody's drawing guns. They're just mad at each other, throwing their flags and all. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff I would expect. But when we think about like the violence, and this is really where terrorism works, right? And I think that a lot voter suppression has always been or terrorism has always been a tool of voter suppression, right? You terrorize people, you bring them to the point where they fear so much that something might happen, they don't show up. Okay, so great. Let's put that fear in them so much. Now, the first tactic was no mail-in ballots. If you mail it in, it's not going to be counted. It's going to be voter fraud. That was the first tactic. That was the
post office slowing down and all that.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And then because I have the postmaster general, who's my guy, I'm going to make sure that this stuff goes sideways. Okay, that didn't work. Now let's start talking about whatever else, you know, may happen with Joe and Kamala, and they're so horrible. That didn't work. Okay, now Corona. Oh, well, I guess we're going to need to shut down these polls. But you just said we can't mail. That didn't work. Now they're all going to show up at the polls. Let's terrorize them. Let's make them feel as though if they show up, they're going to get, you know, killed or whatever. I
expected to see some of that.
Classic voter suppression, huh?
I expected to see that when you know Trump was saying things, you know, during these debates, saying that we need poll watchers and all this. I really expected people to go down and say,
we do need poll watchers.
Try to intimidate people out of voting, but I haven't heard any reports of that today, which is good.
Yeah,
and some states did take measures to make sure that things like that didn't happen. And as Pastor McBride said, the people that would be down there trying to intimidate were in the polls too, because the stats show that early voters are mostly Biden voters, and people that show up at the polls are mostly Trump voters. So Trump voters don't, they're at the polls in line voting, and the lines are so long that I guess they don't want to get out of line to intimidate other people from voting. But I did expect to see more of that. But it's good that we didn't see those things on today.
Can I jump in on the?
Yeah, go ahead, Julius. Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. On the question of violence, it's right now things are calm, and I think things are calm because it's still rather uncertain. There's still voting going on. Right. I think unless there's a very clear winner, where it's just mathematically, litigation-wise, logically, it's just impossible that the other person won. There's going to be half of the country that's going to have a difficult time whenever we find out what the final result is. There's going to be plenty of reasons for one side or the other to doubt the result. And if it's very, very close, and we get a situation like we had in 2000, right? There could be, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. There could be flashpoints somewhere in various cities, regardless of who's doing it, whether it's the right wing or there's clashes between people that are protesting for whatever purpose and police. That could happen, and I think that's part of the reason why some people are prepping. And we cannot also forget that there is still coronavirus to deal with. We have Europe that's been locking down. The United Kingdom is going into lockdown for, I think, about a month, maybe longer. So there's also some people are anticipating that maybe after this election dies down and we get some calmness after the election, that there's going to be another wave of lockdowns. So that's another factor to consider.
I completely agree with you, Julius. I do believe that we're still early in the game. And when the rubber hits the road, it's places like Virginia that's now a problem. It seems to be a problem right now. Then we have Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The election is going to come down to those. And Virginia is not looking all that good right now for Biden. I hope
they still have it kind of called. I mean, they still have it blue.
They still have it blue.
Mm-hmm. It's still blue.
Yeah.
He was up big in the polls for Virginia. It was not even toss up.
Yeah, because it was of the mail-in, and then people started going to the polls, right?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Here's what's
for those of you who know more about
some votes, if you're going to suppress some votes, you suppress the votes of the people who will be voting, for your opponent. But you're trying to suppress the vote for people who are actually going to the polls. Those are the people who are voting for you. I mean, and the Republican side, which was kind of weird to me. But nonetheless, it's an interesting. The map is looking very right down the middle is red.
Yep.
Right down the middle is red.
One of the things that bothers me about rhetoric, man,
yeah,
is and news people always eat it up. It's like it's the thing to talk about, so we talk about it. It's like, no, can we get to the issues? Can we get to the real things? Because I feel I hear the voter suppression, but I promise you, anybody who is anybody right now is actually trying to say, I wanted to mail in my ballot. We had over 100 million people. That's pretty much a third of the country who voted early.
Yes.
Now, granted, as far as what the electoral map of 2016 and 2020 is, it doesn't really look like it's much of a difference. It's all of a sudden, if you ask me, those who enjoy the president's divisive rhetoric are just like, oh, shoot, let's go get our boy who just became an adult. We'll make sure all of these guys vote now so we can keep him in office. That's pretty much, I think, what we're seeing right now. So they came out in droves and did this. As you guys saw, we put up on the national thing. Hey, Steve, it's good to have you on here, sir. But everybody's out voting But the electoral vote, as we look at it presently right now, and as we said, we've got a little bit of the Middle West to do, and the whole West Coast has pretty much got to get a chance to vote. We're looking to see if right now we can swing a state. It's got to be possible to turn right, Claudia. We got to swing one of these states.
Somebody's got to turn blue.
We haven't seen anything.
Go ahead, Alan.
We haven't seen anything that's surprising just yet.
What's your question, Alan?
I'd like to throw a question out, if I may. You know, has anybody heard any significant discussion in the last several weeks of the campaign of actual issues? Or has it devolved into kind of a my team versus your team or personality contest? You know, is our politics really shallow? Or is there real substance? I mean, I think there's real substantial difference between the candidates in terms of what they offer the country, in terms of competence, in terms of leadership. I think there's a big difference and a big choice, but I'm not really hearing any of that in how this is covered by the news media. What are you guys seeing or hearing in that respect?
I haven't heard it either. And one question that was asked of me that I had to ponder for a while was, what is Biden's platform? You know, of course, we can go when we can find the platforms. But when we really think about it, where have you heard it? Biden's platform. Now, Trump has been in office for 4 years. We know what he's all about, right? But in terms of Biden's platform, like you said, Alan, that the news isn't talking about it. We don't see it anywhere. Even the commercials that we've seen, we don't see very many commercials. At least I haven't here in California. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I get a lot of text messages. I know that about all these different things, but they're mostly for a lot of local issues. But just to your point, that I haven't seen a lot, and I don't know if anyone else has seen a lot. Have you all?
I mean, I think that one thing we have to consider is the media is an entertainment business. It is an entertainment corporation.
Money making.
So whether we're talking about CNN, MSNBC, whether we're talking about Fox, quite frankly, all of them are the exact same thing. Now, that's not to say that there are not some who are potentially less biased and maybe more objective than others. But the fact is that they all thrive and operate off of ratings. And so, I mean, even if we think about the debates, right? Like how all of the debates are staged, and how the Republican and Democratic national conventions were staged, and the music and the dun dun dun, like everything is a huge production to cause and generate particular feelings within viewers. So because of that, they're going to set things up in such a way that does lean towards particular things. Now, the other thing I do want to say is this: the Democratic Party has traditionally been a personality party. The Republican Party has traditionally been an issues party. So that if you really listen to them talk, they really drive home. If you listen, they repeat themselves over and over again. There are key words that they just say to really kind of make sure that their base hears them saying the things that they want to hear. Whereas if you go to a Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is all about making you feel a way. It's not about actually speaking to the things that you necessarily want to hear, but it's all like, like Joe's here talking about he's trying to rescue the soul of America. Bro, what does that even mean?
I think
so there's a part of me that feels like, one, I definitely think that the media and communications as a whole is working towards ratings and definitely trying to just get viewers. But I also think that just by virtue of who the incumbent is, I think that has also created an atmosphere that makes conversations about policy very difficult. I remember growing up watching Al Gore versus George Bush and all of them up to that. I remember watching and being like, man, yo, like, I don't know foreign policy. I don't understand the words that they're saying. Like, there used to be a time in American history where when the presidential debate came on, like, you didn't always know what they were talking about. Like, they were quoting countries you've never heard of, policies you have no clue about what's going on. Whereas now, that did not happen. And so I definitely think that there has been a huge transition from, and I think that happened with the Trump presidency, where there has been a transition from policy into personality. And so you have Joe trying to combat Trump at what he does really well, and that is personality. And I think that if he, I'm not sure that he articulated his positions and his policies as effectively as he maybe needed to. And he tried to play Trump's game at his level and try to show that he's a better personality for the job. And we'll just have to
welcome. Gotta meet you.
In that.
Well, I think that when we start talking about, the personality thing's been going on for a minute. But what I'll say, we can look at JFK and all those at that point. But I think that when we really consider platforms, like I said before, they're all one party, right? What goes on is what agenda do the lobbyists have? And that's really what their agenda is. I am by no means naive to think that the Democratic Party is going to come in like Superman with his cape and make things okay. Right? I by no means am naive enough to think that the Republicans are going to come in or they're going to stay here and then we're all going to become enslaved again, right? But what we have to really consider is, what is that thing that they're saying that may appeal to me? I honestly don't necessarily see much of it. Really, where I think the Democrats are, in my opinion, are in a better situation is that, shockingly, they are responding, they are reacting to all of the injustices of Donald Trump himself. Not necessarily the Republican Party, but Donald Trump himself. It's almost as though this election is in reaction, is like, an indictment on that presidency, which I understand. So many people will say, well, I'm not voting for Biden, I'm voting against Trump. It doesn't matter about the platform. It's just the guy. And maybe his platform, but it doesn't matter about the Democrats' platform, but that's what we're seeing. That's what most people are saying. I can't stand Trump. Mm-hmm. And that's the platform. That for them is enough.
Yeah, so, but that's not good enough reason really to vote.
It isn't. It isn't, but it's what it is. It's what we have.
It is really what it is. And the very slogan that somebody mentioned, the soul of the country. Claudia, you mentioned the soul of the country. That simply has to do with Donald Trump. It's just a response to what is felt that over the past 4 years has been a tearing away of the soul of the country. It's not about the policies. It's not about per se a platform. We haven't been hearing too much about that. So
I tell you, I'm very dissatisfied with what I have been hearing.
You're what?
I said I'm very dissatisfied with what I have been hearing from our Democrats.
Well, I think it's what you've not been hearing.
Yes, well, what I did hear is like,
yeah,
today I was watching the news. I took the day off today because I said, this is going to be a deep day. I just had to get my mind right. But I was watching the news today, and maybe it's because of COVID, but they were saying, that Trump, obviously he's defied CDC guidelines, recommendations. He's been holding rallies. He's been going here and there. He hit up a few states in the last few days. And basically the word on the street is that Trump's campaign has been hitting the ground harder than Biden. And they've been pretty much going, digital, trying to get things out, through phones and, mobile. And so, I'm asking you guys the questions, because I'm looking at these numbers in 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, PA, and early reporting, but Biden is trailing in all of these. Michigan and Wisconsin, these were states where, you know, in the last election, they said Hillary never even came, and they turned red. So what are you guys thinking? You know, did COVID have a big, you know, in trying to literally say, hey, you know, we're trying to follow CDC guidelines? Did the Democrats potentially miscalculate in how they reached out to their base? I'm just asking a question.
They took their base for granted. Bottom line. As they
I think as it relates to, generally the Democrats take their base for granted. But I think as it relates to those three states, I do believe that focus has to be made on campaigning in your strong territory and not necessarily trying to go across the lines of places where you may not win. I do believe that Biden, I've said for the past how many years that the three states that Biden probably just need to focus on and campaign in would be Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Those are the three states that if he loses any of those, he's going to lose the election. Not Florida, not Ohio, because we know those states are going to be they're going to go the way they're going right now. But I do believe also COVID became a challenge, and but we can still say the same for the Republican Party. It was a challenge for Donald Trump too. He just took the risk, went out, campaigned, did all the things that the CDC guidelines did not say that he should do. People supported him. People voted for him, and we're seeing right now that maybe people prefer to take that risk with him.
On the is Donald Trump's outreach, if you will. He you know, he touts himself as the president who's done the most for African Americans in, you know, American history. But there is something to be said that he is, in his own weird way, even if you say, you know, Trump is a racist, in his own self-interest, he feels he has to do certain things to chip away at the black vote for Democrats. And one thing I noticed, because I'm married to someone who's from Mexico, and, you know, we watch a lot of Spanish language television, is that Trump makes a lot of outreach to the Latin American community. And I saw, unless I was married to someone who's from Mexico and I watched, you know, Latin American TV, Univision, Televisa, and all that, Telemundo, things like that, it would just be over my, I would never know that this was going on. Yeah, but he has some interesting advertisements targeted at this community. And again, getting the idea that Democrats take their base for granted, you would think, okay, Latinos, they're going to vote for Democrats. But if you understand Latin culture and a lot of the Western hemisphere don't speak English, they speak Spanish. And if you understand that culture, there's a contingent within that culture that's very conservative, that really that meshes quite well with what the Republicans. Yeah. So Biden, Trump doesn't need all of them, but he can tap into that to the Cuban American community. Yeah. So again, to the Democrats, you gotta be on it with that group. Don't take them for granted. So that's what I've just personally, what I've experienced just watching that medium of communication, that he's tapping into something, and he may have tapped into it in 2016, and he's trying to do that again. Watch out, you know, it's going to be, yeah.
You know,
so let me ask this question. I want to ask.
I'm actually from Barbados, right? And when we came here, it was Republicans. I mean, my family was Republican. Don't Jenkins, don't tell my dad I'm telling you this, okay? He knows my dad, don't tell him. Anyway, they were like super conservative. And that was like, it was Reagan time, right? They voted, they were like, yes. And I think that perspective of monolith voting based on what you look like was really crazy. Now, I also want to do another shout out, because being from Barbados, and I am, Shirley Chisholm was my cousin, interestingly enough, shockingly, right?
Like your blood cousin?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, my mom's father and her were brother and sister. Anyway, so when we came, like, there was this conflict, obviously, right? Because we're very, very conservative, very, very conservative in my country. But then we come here, and then we've got Shirley Chisholm as a family member, and we're like, you know, so there's a lot of misconstruing of the Black vote, the Latino vote, the Asian vote, and I do think that Democrats have taken this ride, like, okay, well, we put Kamala in, so we're going to get the Black vote. Peace. Because I'm going to tell you, when Ice Cube took that contract with Black America to them, it was like, no, we got Kamala, we're good, we're okay. And that thing, now, mind you, Black people are like, Ice Cube, what are you doing? Why are you going to piss off the Democrats and blah, 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 blah. Then he went to the Republicans and they were like, well, let's take a look. Why? Because they're not taking those votes for granted. And I'm not saying that they love Black people, but I'm going to say they want those doggone votes. And what's politics about? Mm-hmm. So let's look at what is really happening, and let's look at who our loyalties are really given to and what we're getting in return for those loyalties. And that, my friend, has been the biggest problem for Democrats, hands down.
Charles, I want to hear from you. I think you may be the youngest one as part of this panel tonight. Tell us your perspective on this election, what you've heard us talk about on tonight, since that you've been on the stream. Just your entire perspective on what's been happening across the country and where we are on tonight and what's up, to be won on this evening.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, first of all, man, I just have to say I was watching the panel for a long while before I joined it, just sort of listening and taking the temperature and seeing what y'all talking about. And man, y'all, this has been great. Like, this is a real quality conversation going on. I have to say, I'm in my group chats, my political group chats. I'm on my Twitter timeline right now, and I'm a little concerned. Yesterday, people were talking about, maybe not landslide, but, potentially like a significant victory. Today, as the votes are coming in, and we're looking at Florida, we're looking at Michigan, we're looking at Pennsylvania, we're looking at Ohio, North Carolina. Texas looked good for a while, but now not so much. It is a little bit concerning. And one of the things that I'm reminded of is, I think Trump's strongest appeal is this sort of nationalistic, fascist, racist appeal that is strong, and not only strong, but it's secret strong. It's a type of appeal that there's a large contingent that is now very excited to say, oh yes, I am Trump supporter, I'm out here. But there's a much larger contingent that, potentially because of the positions they hold in society, potentially because they don't want to stress family and friends, they are rocking with Trump, but will do so in secret, in silence. And I think right now we are seeing, it's definitely not over. There's a lot of early votes that have yet to be counted. So this is it's not at all doom and gloom. But I think people are right now being very surprised.
I think we're losing Charles. Is that just me?
Oh, I heard him.
No, can you hear?
Have you all lost me?
I got him. He's a little choppy, but I can hear him.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Keep going.
You're good. Go ahead.
All I'm saying is that
I can't hear him at all. It must be me.
The early projections of a significant victory now giving way to a much tighter race, tight margin of victory. I think we have vastly underestimated, honestly, the power of whiteness, and the power of whiteness to congeal and stick together and vote for whiteness. And then also too, the conversation about the Latino votes, also specifically Cubans in the Florida community. This is something that I think has been underestimated. And I think to Pastor Morris's question, we saw Biden and Obama out in Georgia, very recently, trying to pick up what some people might call a luxury swing, like something that nobody thought would be in play, maybe could be in play. could that time have been better spelled elsewhere? I think if Trump manages to pull this out, that's going to be a key question that's asked in the aftermath. But I am concerned. We're gonna see. I'm concerned.
Steve, talk to us.
Well, my wife tells me that Trump's going to win. She's a pessimist, but anyway, I don't know. You guys are the experts here. I'm just listening, and I guess my question with all of this is, do all of these advertisements and rallies actually change people's mind? I mean, do any of you believe in the undecided voter? After 4 years of the current administration, how can someone be undecided unless they're ignorant of what's been going on? I'd like to hear from you on that, because I just, I get the whole thing about, Trump reaching out to the Latino community and, the fact that Biden didn't go to certain states or whatever, and maybe that's going to impact it. Like, I don't know. I just don't understand how someone, unless they're not quite all there, or they've been like on vacation for a long time, somewhere where they don't know what's going on in the world. How can you be undecided at this point? So I guess my thing, it's more about getting people out to vote, right? Which maybe these rallies do that. Maybe I think it's more the ground game, the different, offices and volunteers out there knocking on doors and getting people to the polls. To me, that's going to be a bigger factor here. I don't know, what are your thoughts on all that?
Steve, if I could just chime in on that real quick. I was kind of blown away that, just last year when I was just researching for this election, and I'm thinking, and I'm an independent, but you got Democrats, you got Republicans. And I think I've often had this notion that it's two major parties. And I'm thinking, man, they're going blow to blow. They're 50-50. And, you got these little parties, the Libertarian, but it's really like 27-27 Democrats, Republican in terms of membership, in terms of the country. And then you got the largest group is actually, you got these independents there. You got these independents who are just sitting there. And I think that probably plays into, the swing, going back and forth. There are people who are out there to be had, or their vote is there to be had. And so, if you don't, like you just said, we talked about just a few minutes earlier, if you're not getting out there and making your case and coming with a strong case, you just might lose that vote.
So there's a book called Working White Class that it rocked my world. Let me tell you, it rocked my world. And why it did was because there was talk in this book about the candidates not knowing, being completely tone deaf on the needs of working white people. It was actually a book about why Trump won, essentially. So there was like an ethnographic study of this group, like not necessarily Appalachia, but like in middle America, and one of the interesting things that came out was the women in this particular group were so offended by Hillary's push for them to have like equal standing and be able to work and be able to, have all of the luxuries that men have. And it was astounding to me, right? It was astounding to me just being who I am. But then I continued to read, and what it said was, that is not what we want. We want our husbands to be able to earn enough money so we can stay home and take care of the home and take care of the kids. And you are out and you're telling us that we need to be this and that we're ignorant because we want to be housewives. Now, I want you to remember what Donald Trump said just a few days ago. I'm going to get your husbands back out to work. This political party understands its base. They understand that these women don't want to be professors, and they don't want to go out and conquer the world and be Sheryl Sandberg. They don't want to be that. Why are we conducting a campaign that says, yes, that's what you want to be, and if you don't want to be that, then you're undesirable?
So why are they voting against their own economic self-interest?
That is not what they're thinking about, because
it's so astounding to me how the billionaire class of conservatives have sold working class white people on an economic program that harms them.
Well, think about this. One part of the book says that these people believe that anybody who's a boss, that means like a Donald Trump or like, the Koch brothers or anything like Koch brothers or whatever, they, regardless of what they say, they've actually gotten there by some means or method. So they can be trusted.
Daddy's money.
to take care of us. And whatever they say is the best thing because they actually do it. So that's what we're aspiring for our husbands to get to. And that's why they vote that way. They're not voting because they think that, oh, okay, well, coal is going to come back. It really doesn't matter if coal comes back. All that matters is my husband, am I going to be able to not have to work at the local, five and dime? And if you're not giving me that, and I also believe that the Mexicans are the ones taking those jobs, which even though I don't see it, somebody's told me that. And the people who I trust, who are those bosses, are the ones telling me this. So that's where I land. And
I'm in California, and I would hire a Mexican to do an awful lot of things that I wouldn't hire a white person to do. Because they're better.
I'm going to go there. I'm a diversity strategist. I can't even have you say that in my own space, but I see where you're going with that.
That's just my experience.
No, but this is the point. It is not based on logic. You're applying logic. You're applying a certain rationale to something that is emotion based. It is not about rational. Right. It's not about logic. And this has been something, historically speaking, that especially the Southern white community. There's this Southern belle. She doesn't work. She doesn't have to work. Her husband takes care of her. I want to go back to, the good old days, the antebellum period. Like, this is what they've always sold me. And now I can't have that because these immigrants are coming over here, or these, Black people are threatening to be violent with me, or my husband can't get a job because of, Obama's politics.
I feel like speaking of the good old days, I got to tell this story. I have a client who is an African-American Muslim, younger guy, and his daughter going to school. They were having like dress up like the 50s day. And so he's like, okay, so he puts on a big Afro wig on his daughter and gives her a sign, about equal rights. And she goes to school, and the teacher's like, that's not exactly what I had in mind. And he's like, well, that's what my people, looked like in the 50s.
We were doing in the 50s.
Right?
Right.
That's what the costume was back then.
Right. Yeah.
There's something you said, Dr. Shindell, that I thought was so profound. And it's like sometimes these things, but like sometimes when you haven't like fully read the research or whatever, it doesn't fully click. But as you were talking, it was just like, wow, no duh. Because how many times has the Republican Party come out and said that, or that base has come out and said their main thing is the home? They literally believe everything comes out of the nuclear family. And when the nuclear family is disrupted, all of society is disrupted. And so that's what their party seeks to maintain. And it's what they consider to be the downfall of the Black community, right? Every conversation they have is because our fathers are not in the home. It's because of the LGBTQ plus agenda that's destroying.
I wonder why they're not in the home.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
And so that is such a profound thing to hear, in the sense that you do have these white women, these white mothers, these white wives who are basically saying, we subscribe to this social, not just social conditioning, but this social structure.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually, in fact, believe that you are disrupting a proper social structure by imposing this. I mean, I used to hear jokes about that. Like, I used to hear like women make jokes, and I would laugh because I would be like, oh yeah, that is funny. Just like, I don't want to work. Like, I'm good at home watching court TV, chilling and whatnot, housewife life. And so
that was one of the major risks when we had women's suffrage, right? Women, we had like these women who were like, oh, I want to vote, I want to work, I want to, or I want to do it. Black women were like, well, shoot, we've been working. We've been working. I mean, I'm not, that's not something I'm fighting for. Like, our agendas are completely different. And this is why we really need to look at, when we're saying, oh, okay, well, I do want this party, or I do want whatever. I don't think, in fact, no, I know that none of the parties are actually able to really, really hone in on what my particular agenda is. Like, I can say, oh, I'm a woman, I'm all this, this super accomplished woman, but let me tell you something. I'm not under the feminist agenda, because my needs are not their needs. So their agenda is different than my agenda. My agenda is, when my 14-year-old boy goes out of this house, that he doesn't get shot. Where is that on the feminist agenda? My agenda is that when I go to work, I don't have to worry. If I were to work in an organization, I don't have to worry about my natural afro, right? That's not on the feminist agenda. Like, we've got completely different agendas. And so when we're talking about, okay, well, I'm a Democrat because it's about women empowerment, but which women? Which women are we talking about? Let's disaggregate that data. So we have to be very, very clear of mind when we're saying, okay, I want to go after this. Now, I do want to say that I think that the Democratic agenda will allow a lot more flexibility for things like that to actually happen. But if I'm going to say that, their platform, as concrete as that might be or might not be, is something that I subscribe to, I can't say that. I can't say that. So, that's the reality at this point.
If I can jump in on the economic angle of it, and I think it ties in with what's been mentioned about the white working class. Mm-hmm. There is, I would say, the past 40, 50 years, inflation has been eating away at the purchasing power of Americans, and our economy has been weakening in a way that people are catching on to. And when that when your economic situation is eroding, you start looking for someone to blame, someone to point the finger at, and two, a savior, someone to save you. Mm-hmm. And both, again, and during this time when our economy has been weakening and our purchasing power has been eroding, slowly, albeit, the financial sector, Wall Street, has been enhancing its purchasing power and just ballooning beyond imagination compared to the manufacturing sector in this country, which is where those men worked before, so that their wives could stay at home, right? And how does that play out in this huge country? And I think that's another angle to this situation we find ourselves in. There's a lot of economic angst out there, and both parties, whether it's we had Reagan, then we had Clinton, then we had Bush, then we had Obama, but the trend is the same. The banks get bigger, Wall Street gets richer, and the 99% is, I guess that's what they call it now, gets poorer. And
The agenda is in the lobbyist's hands.
Yeah, it seems like it just seems like who actually holds the power is the big banks.
Yeah,
and right now on Wall Street, their positioning is, regardless of who wins, they just want to know who's going to win. They're already thinking about the next two stimulus, not the $1,200 checks, the crumbs that they're going to give us. They're thinking about the trillions that are going to go to their big corporations and their big banks, the trillions that the Federal Reserve is going to give out in zero to low interest to the big banks that they will turn around and then loan to us at much higher rates of interest, regardless of who wins. So that's another economic angle, and people are really getting poor. And who are they going to blame? Blame China, blame the Mexicans, blame the Democrats, blame the Republicans. They have us fighting each other when we should be
holding them accountable.
There we go.
That is a really good point that you bring in, Julius. I want to take the time right now, guys, to just let you know we are 3 minutes before we close this particular segment out. I want to say thank you to all of our viewers watching on Facebook and on YouTube. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate your statements that many of you have made to encourage the conversation and continue pushing this on. This was a big step out to try to see, just engage individuals like yourselves and give you something else to also kind of look at outside of just CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and the AP, Associated Press. But it has been a blast hanging with you. One of the things that we have come to understand here is that while this is a national election and a vote going on right now, you also have local elections going on in your communities. And I'm talking to those of you who are watching, who will watch this again on tonight. Should Biden win, we as a community of individuals, whoever you may find yourself to be, has a responsibility to hold your elected officials accountable and to give them the things that you want done in your city, in your state, wherever you are. Should Trump win, again, you still have that same responsibility. What we're watching right now in this particular national election is this. People have come out to vote. Yes, they have. Before we even started this, and as you woke up this morning, you looked at your TV, you saw a third of the nation had already come out and vote early to let the world know, hey, whatever happened in 2016, we want something to either be the same or different. Now, we're not sure how this particular thing is coming out right now. You've heard me say on here that the electoral map of 2016 and 2020 are looking eerily similar. They're not seeming to miss a beat at all. And right now we have some states that are up in the air. We're looking at Arizona that we need to see where they're going to go. We're looking at even Pennsylvania, who has not completely declared what's going on. My stats show them at 43% still reporting, but it's 55% Donald Trump right now. And we have done our best throughout this conversation is to put up a few stats so that everyone can kind of see what's going on in the world. We're looking for an opportunity right now to see what the West Coast is going to do when it continues to close down its polls. And if the numbers stay the same that they were in 2016, except that there are more votes that come in, well, there's work to be done. But watch this. Dr. Schindel told us that if the numbers actually change, we still have work to do, guys. We still have something to do. Julius pointed out just now in his conversation, and that whether it's a Republican or it's a Democrat who comes in, big banks are still doing their thing. They're still running the world. They're still running the show. And so we have a responsibility, guys, to just literally, as Pastor Jenkins said, not vote like fourth graders anymore. Take a look at what you are actually voting for. You also heard us talk about a few things of voter suppression or the rallies and stuff like that. And Steve was asking the question, does any of that actually change what goes on? And we can probably say it does, just with the early voting that has shown up. We've seen it's gone quite a bit. But on tonight, guys, we've had the awesome opportunity of having Dr. Crichton on with us. We've had Dr. Yehuda Williams on with us. We've got Claudia Allen on. We have Carmela Monk on with us as well. Dr. Shinde, I keep saying that wrong. I apologize. Charles Eaton, Steve Allen Reinhardt with us, and Julius. It has been a blast. We thought we would know where we're going right now, but once we sign out from here, our eyes will still be on the TV. Some of us might go to sleep tonight and still not know until we wake up tomorrow morning. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching The Conversation right here at Kansas Avenue Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm going to turn the time back over to my co-host. He is none other than Pastor Michael Jenkins.
Amen. I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, those who are here now and those who stopped in but had to go because they had other engagements. It has been a great conversation. It has been stimulating. I thank you all for coming by, stopping by, and giving your input to make this a success. We just said, as pastors, we were in our meeting, we just said, hey, let's just do it and see what happens and see where it goes. And it has been a blessing. We have enjoyed it. And thank you all for saying yes as we have reached out to you. We want everyone out there to know that we encourage you to vote your conscience. Vote your conscience, but get informed about the issues. Yes, elections, the voting has stopped for the day, it's ended. But in the future, and any other time, vote your conscience, get informed, get involved. We are all living here. We've got a part to play. We've got civic duties. We are not just living in a spiritual world. We are in this physical, secular world. And so we have a part to play. So get out there and get informed and get involved and vote your conscience. We will always say that. We will always promote that. We will always, always, always encourage that. Amen. But at the end of the day, we say yes to God. We say yes to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That is where our ultimate vote goes. And if anything is ever in conflict, the decision is easy. We choose Christ every day. Amen. So again, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We're going to close out with a word of prayer, and we'll just watch the results and see what happens tonight and on tomorrow. Maybe we'll have to come on back and say something else. But may each one of you be consoled no matter what the decision is tonight, the final decision. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer as we close out. Father in heaven, we are grateful for you being with us throughout this conversation and just giving us insight as we have collectively come together to put our minds and our wisdom and our experience together. And I pray, Lord, that you would be with this nation as a whole, with this world as a whole. We are torn apart and divided in so many areas, but I pray, Lord, that we can be united and that the best things possible would happen for everybody here, that people would have the health care that they need, that people would have the jobs that they so desperately need, that this coronavirus thing would be a thing of the past as we are serious about eradicating it. Lord, there's so many issues that are on the table that we vote on in various ways and in various language through the props and the questions and the measures that are on our ballot. And whoever is elected as the leader of this country tonight, Lord, I pray that you would be with that individual as well, that they would indeed serve the people, that they would serve the people. But through it all, Lord, we say yes to you. And we know ultimately that you are in charge and in control. And we look forward to the day when you come back and we don't have to cast any more ballots because we will be with you throughout the seasons of eternity. Bless every individual that was part of this tonight. We thank you now in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all again. Have a great night. May God bless you. And until next time, because we'll be calling on you again to join us on another conversation. All right, everybody. Good night. We are ending it now.